A 12-year-old girl stood in the doorway of Hell's Riders MC garage, shaking so violently her teeth chattered against each other. Snow melted in her hair. Blood streaked down her wrist from where she'd clawed her way over a chain-link fence. The bikers inside froze mid-wrench, mid-cigarette, mid-conversation. Exhaust smoke curled through fluorescent light. She opened her mouth twice before any sound came out. "She's in the trunk." Ma'am. 3 words. The temperature in that garage dropped 20 degrees. Outside, a winter storm was rolling in from the north, turning the sky the color of old bruises. Inside, 8 men in leather cuts stood perfectly still, staring at a child who shouldn't know where to find them, shouldn't be bleeding, shouldn't be here at all. And every single one of them knew whatever came next would be written in consequences they couldn't take back. This is a story about the line between protection and violence, about what happens when broken men become the only thing standing between a child and darkness. Stay until the end. You'll understand why some debts can never be repaid. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. You're going to need to buckle up for this one. The girl's name was Alice Mercer, and she was supposed to be in 6th grade social studies right now, not standing in a motorcycle club garage with scraped palms and winter wind howling through the open bay door behind her. Alfie Raines saw her first. He'd been torching rust off a Harley frame, safety goggles pushed up on his forehead when movement caught his peripheral vision. He killed the torch. The sudden silence made everyone look up. Alice swayed on her feet like she might collapse. Her jacket was too thin for December, no gloves. Her jeans were soaked from the knees down. She'd been running through snow. Behind her, the storm clouds were moving fast, that sick greenish gray that promised ice and zero visibility within the hour. Alfie set down the torch carefully, deliberately, the way you move around spooked animals. "Hey." His voice came out rougher than he meant. Decades of cigarettes and cold morning rides did that. "You okay?" Stupid question. She was 12 and bleeding, and clearly not okay. But what else do you say to a kid who just invaded your world without permission? Alice's eyes darted around the garage, cataloging everything. 3 bikes in various states of disassembly, tool chests taller than she was, oil stains that had been ground into the concrete for so long they'd become part of the floor itself. Posters on the walls. A space heater glowing orange in the corner. Men in leather and denim watching her like she was a bomb that might detonate. She was breathing too fast, that shallow panic breathing that comes right before someone passes out or starts screaming. Alfie took 1 step forward. Just one. His boots scraped against concrete and Alice flinched. Behind him, Marcus Reaper Donovan straightened up from the workbench where he'd been cleaning carburetor parts. Reaper was 6'3", 240, with a scar that ran from his left eyebrow down to his jaw. He looked like violence waiting for an excuse, but his voice came out gentle. "Someone chasing you?" Alice shook her head, then nodded, then shook it again. Words weren't working right. Her whole body was trembling now, adrenaline crash hitting hard after whatever sprint had brought her here. Alfie glanced at the other men. Silent communication, the kind that comes from riding together for years, the kind that doesn't need words. Gage was already moving toward the bay door, scanning the street outside. Wicker killed the radio. The sudden absence of music made the space feel even colder. Alfie crouched down slowly, putting himself at eye level with Alice. His knees cracked. 53 years old and every mile showed. "Nobody's going to hurt you here, but we need to know what's happening." Alice's lips moved. Nothing came out at first. Then, barely a whisper. "Vanessa." "Who's Vanessa?" Alfie kept his voice level, patient, even though something cold was already crawling up his spine. "My best friend." Alice's voice cracked. She was crying now, silent tears cutting tracks through the grime on her face. "He took her after school. We were waiting for her mom, and he grabbed her, shoved her in the trunk. I tried to..." Her breath hitched. "I tried to stop him, but he pushed me, and I hit the curb, and when I got up, he was already driving away." The temperature in the garage dropped another 10 degrees. Reaper moved first, crossing the space in 3 long strides. "Who took her? You know his name?" Alice nodded frantically. Brian Turner. He's Vanessa's dad, but they don't live together anymore. Her mom has a restraining order. He's not supposed to..." She couldn't finish. The words dissolved into choking sobs. Brian Turner. The name hit Alfie like a fist to the gut. He knew that name. Hell, half the guys in this garage knew that name. Brian used to work here, 5, maybe 6 years ago. Back when he was still married, still employed, still looked like he might pull his life together. He'd been a decent mechanic, quiet guy, good with electrical systems. Then everything fell apart. The marriage, the job, the sobriety. Last Alfie heard, Brian was living in some extended stay motel out past the industrial zone, barely hanging on. Now he was driving around with a kid in his trunk. Wicker spoke up from near the door, his voice tight. "What kind of car?" "Silver." Alice dragged her sleeve across her face. "Silver sedan. Old. I don't know what kind." The back bumper was all dented and there was a sticker from the elementary school, the one Vanessa went to before middle school. Which direction? Gage was already pulling his phone out, thumbs moving across the screen. Toward... Alice turned, trying to orient herself. Toward the old factories. East. He went east on Hamilton, and then turned, and I lost him, but he was heading toward where all the warehouses are. Alfie stood up. His knees protested. Everything hurt these days. Old injuries from crashes and fights, and a decade in the army before that. But pain was just information, and right now the information didn't matter. A 12-year-old was in a trunk. Winter storm rolling in. Man who took her was spiraling, desperate, probably hadn't thought past the grab itself. That made him more dangerous than someone with a plan. Desperate men did irreversible things. The garage came alive. Reaper was already at his bike, checking fuel. Gage had his cut on, keys in hand. Wicker killed the space heater and grabbed his helmet. No discussion necessary, no vote. This was what they did. Not the illegal shit people assumed when they saw the patches on their backs. This. The thing that mattered when everything else was stripped away. But Alfie held up one hand. "Wait." They stopped. All of them. Waiting. Alfie looked at Alice. "Where's Vanessa's mom?" "She..." Alice's voice was steadying now that people were moving, now that something was happening instead of nothing. "She's at work. She works at the medical building downtown. 3rd floor. Billing department. Someone needs to tell her." Alfie's jaw tightened. "And we need to call this in." "Cops are already 40 minutes behind." Reaper's voice was flat. "By the time they mobilize..." "I know." Alfie cut him off. "But we still call it in. We find him. We call. We're not a vigilante outfit. We're just faster than dispatch." It was a fine line they walked. Always had been. The club had a reputation. Deserved, mostly. But there were rules. Old rules. From when the Riders were founded back in the 70s by guys who came home from Vietnam with too much adrenaline and nowhere to put it. They didn't work for the law, but they didn't work against it either. They lived in the margins, in the places where official channels moved too slow or didn't care enough. Places like this. Gage was already dialing, not 911. That would waste time with questions and transfers. He called Sheriff McKinley's direct line. They had history. Not good history, not bad history, just history. McKinley answered on the 3rd ring. Gage laid it out in 30 seconds. Child abduction, custody dispute gone violent, possible location, vehicle description. McKinley swore, said he'd roll units, said don't do anything stupid. Gage hung up. He said 20 minutes minimum. Gage's expression was grim. Roads are already icing up. They'll be coming from the South Station. Chamu, boss, ispos. 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, Brian could be across county lines. In 20 minutes, he could be anywhere. In 20 minutes, whatever thin thread was holding him together could snap completely. Alfie turned back to Alice. "You did good coming here, real good, but now you stay put, understand? You stay in this garage. You stay warm. You don't leave." Alice's eyes went wide. "But Vanessa? We'll find her." Alfie's voice carried weight, the kind of certainty you either had or faked well enough that it didn't matter. "You got her this far. Now let us do the rest." For a moment, Alice looked like she might argue. Then something in her face crumpled, and she just nodded, exhausted. Alfie pointed toward the office in the back corner. A glorified closet with a space heater, a coffee maker that was older than Alice, and a couch that had seen better decades. "Go sit in there. Make yourself some hot chocolate if you can find any. We'll be back. It. Alice didn't move toward the office. She stood there, small and shaking, watching these men prepare for something she didn't fully understand, watching them transform from grease-stained mechanics into something else entirely. Reaper rolled his Harley forward, the engine catching with that distinctive thunder that made windows rattle 3 blocks away. Gage was right behind him. Wicker, Smoke, Polly. All of them firing up in sequence, the sound building into something physical, something you felt in your chest. Outside the bay door, snow was starting to fall. Not the pretty kind. The kind that cut visibility to nothing and turned highways into ice rinks. Alfie grabbed his own helmet, his cut already on, leather worn soft from years of road salt and weather. Before he could mount up, a voice from the doorway stopped everyone cold. "Where is she?" Kate Turner stood in the bay door opening, and she looked like she'd aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. Her scrubs were disheveled. No coat. She'd clearly run from her car. Her face was the color of old paper. Alice must have called her, or maybe someone from the school did. Didn't matter. She was here now, and the look in her eyes was the kind of terror that had no bottom. "Kate." Alfie kept his voice steady. "We're heading out right now to, He took her." Kate's voice broke. Not a question. A statement. The worst confirmation. "He actually took her. When they called, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she just went home with Alice. Maybe—" She couldn't finish. Her hands were shaking worse than Alice's had been. Alfie moved toward her but stopped a few feet away. You had to be careful with people in shock. Too much comfort, and they shattered. Not enough, and they shattered anyway. Alice said he was headed toward the industrial zone, east on Hamilton. Silver sedan, damaged rear bumper, elementary school sticker. Kate nodded mechanically, like her body was running on autopilot while her brain tried to process the impossible. "That's his car. He's been—" She stopped, started again. "He's been calling, leaving messages, saying he just wants to see her. That I'm keeping her from him. That he's her father. I told him the court order was for a reason. That he needed to get help first. But he wouldn't listen. How bad is he?" Reaper's question was blunt but necessary. Kate's laugh was ugly, hollow. "He lost his job 8 months ago. Started drinking again. Then pills. I filed for divorce, got the restraining order. He's been staying in that motel on Route 9. The Starlight. He calls it the Starlight, but everyone knows it's where people go when they've run out of everywhere else." She looked up at the bikers, at these men she barely knew, up at the men she'd probably crossed the street to avoid under normal circumstances. He wasn't always like this. He used to be good. He used to work here, some of you remember. He was good with bikes, good with his hands. But after his brother died, after he got laid off, something broke. And I couldn't fix him. Nobody said the obvious thing, that it wasn't her job to fix him. That some people broke in ways that couldn't be repaired. That the best you could do sometimes was get out before they pulled you under too. Alfie glanced at the others. Silent calculation. Brian Turner, 6 years ago, had been a decent guy who showed up on time and didn't start trouble. Brian Turner now was an unknown variable, chemically altered, pushed past breaking, armed with desperation and nothing left to lose. "Sheriff's rolling units," Alfie told Kate. "We're going to spread out, cover the industrial zone. You should—" "I'm coming with you." Kate's voice was steel. "Kate, she's my daughter." The words came out like bullets. "You think I'm going to sit here and wait? You think I'm going to let you find her without me there? If he sees me, if he hears my voice, maybe he'll listen. Maybe he'll—" Her voice cracked again, but she forced it steady. "I'm coming. You can't stop me." Technically, they could. Practically, she was right. Sometimes a familiar voice was the only thing that could reach someone who'd gone too far inside their own head. And if this went sideways, if Brian panicked or made a choice that couldn't be unmade, Kate deserved to be there. Not because she could change it, but because she'd have to live with it either way. Alfie looked at Reaper. Reaper shrugged. It was a risk. Everything about this was a risk. "You ride with me," Alfie said finally. "You stay behind me until I say otherwise. If things get bad, you do exactly what I tell you. Understood?" Kate nodded. She was already moving toward his bike before he finished talking. Alice appeared in the office doorway, watching her best friend's mother climb onto the back of a Harley while men in leather prepared to hunt through a winter storm. This wasn't how the world was supposed to work. Teachers and principals and police officers were supposed to handle emergencies, not bikers, not motorcycle clubs with reputations that made people nervous. But the world didn't work the way it was supposed to. Alice was learning that fast. Alfie handed Kate a spare helmet. She put it on with shaking hands. Behind them, the other riders were already rolling out, exhausts rumbling like war drums. The storm was getting worse. Snow blew sideways through the bay door, melting on hot engines. Visibility was maybe a quarter mile and dropping. "We'll find her, Issy," Alfie said, not sure if he was talking to Kate or Alice or himself. "We'll bring her home." Then he kicked his bike into gear and they rolled out into the storm, leaving Alice alone in the garage with instructions she probably wouldn't follow and a phone number she'd been told to use if anyone except the riders showed up. The street outside was already accumulating snow. Traffic lights swayed in the wind. The temperature was dropping fast, down into the low 20s and still falling. Hamilton Avenue stretched east like a gray ribbon, disappearing into white static. Somewhere out there, a 12-year-old girl was locked in a trunk, terrified, probably freezing. Somewhere out there, a broken man was making choices he'd regret for whatever was left of his life. And 8 motorcycles split into formation, their headlights cutting through the storm like predator eyes, hunting. Mazg. They covered ground fast, despite the weather. Reaper and Smoke took the northern route along the old industrial corridor where abandoned factories hunched against the sky like sleeping giants. Wicker and Gage swept south toward the rail yards where freight trains sat frozen on sidings, graffiti-covered and forgotten. Alfie stayed central on Hamilton with Kate pressed against his back, her arms locked around his waist, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had just revealed itself to be made of smoke. The industrial zone was exactly what it sounded like. 20 square blocks of rust and ruin, places that used to make things back when making things was enough to sustain a town. Now it was just real estate nobody wanted, buildings with broken windows and for lease signs that had been up so long the phone numbers didn't work anymore. Empty parking lots, chain link fences, loading docks where nothing loaded. During the day it was depressing. At night, especially a night like this, it was the kind of place where bad decisions became permanent. Alfie's radio crackled. They were using the club channel, encrypted enough that casual scanners wouldn't pick it up. Reaper's voice came through static, corrupted but clear enough. Nothing on Fletcher, checking the Allied steel lot next. Copy. Alfie keyed the response, then focused back on the road. Ice was forming fast. His rear tire slipped twice before he backed off the throttle. Speed didn't matter if you dumped the bike. Kate's grip tightened every time they passed a side street or parking lot. Every silver vehicle made her tense up. But most of the cars out here were abandoned, stripped, or belonged to the handful of businesses still clinging to life. An auto parts shop, a scrap metal dealer, a welding supply place that looked like it was operating on pure spite. The radio crackled again. Gage this time. Got something. Route 9 extended, about 2 miles east of the turnoff. Silver sedan parked behind the old Morrison plant. Plates matched the description. Alfie's heart kicked. You see anyone? Negative, car's empty. Engine's cold. Been here a while. Don't approach. Hold position. Alfie was already turning, Kate shifting her weight to compensate. We're 3 minutes out. Morrison Manufacturing had shut down in 2008, a victim of the recession and Chinese competition, and a dozen other things that killed American industrial towns slow and mean. The building was 4 stories of brick and broken promises, surrounded by a parking lot big enough to hold 300 cars when the third shift was running. Now it held exactly 1, a battered silver sedan with a bent rear bumper and a sun-faded elementary school sticker in the back window. Alfie pulled up alongside Gage and killed his engine. The sudden silence was oppressive. Wind howled through broken windows somewhere in the Morrison building. Kate was off the bike before Alfie could stop her, running toward the sedan. He caught her arm. Wait, that's his car. Kate was pulling against his grip. She could be, I know. Alfie didn't let go. But we do this careful. She's bullshitting. Reaper and the others were arriving now, bikes forming a loose perimeter around the sedan. Smoke approached the vehicle from the driver's side. Hand resting on something at his hip, Alfie couldn't see but could guess. He peered through the window, tried the door. Locked. He circled around to the trunk, pressed his ear against it, listened. Then he looked up at Alfie and shook his head. Empty. Kate made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Alfie released her arm and she staggered toward the car anyway, pressing her hands against the trunk like she could will Vanessa into existence through sheet metal and prayer. But Smoke was right. The trunk was empty. They all knew it. You could tell by the way the car sat on its suspension, by the hollow sound when Smoke knocked against it. He moved her. Reaper was scanning the Morrison building, the vacant lots beyond it, the street that continued east into darker, emptier territory. Question is where? Alfie was already calling McKinley. The sheriff answered immediately. Tell me you got something. Morrison Manufacturing, Route 9 extended. Found his vehicle. Empty. No sign of the girl or Turner. McKinley swore. We're 10 minutes out, maybe 15 with this weather. You checked the building? Yes, sí. Alfie looked up at the Morrison plant. 4 stories. Probably 50,000 square feet. 1,000 places to hide. About to. Wait for us. Sheriff? I mean it, Rains. You go in there without backup, and this turns into something neither of us can walk back from. 10 minutes. Alfie hung up. 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, Brian could be doing anything. In 10 minutes, Vanessa could be hypothermic. In 10 minutes, the thin margin between rescue and tragedy could evaporate completely. He looked at the other riders, looked at Kate, looked at the building. We're going in, he said. Nobody argued. Eat. The Morrison building had 3 entrances still accessible, front doors chained but with enough gap to slip through, a loading dock with a roll-up door stuck half open, and a side door that had been kicked in so many times the frame was just splintered wood and good intentions. They chose the loading dock. More coverage if things went bad. Multiple exits if they needed to move fast. Inside smelled like rust and pigeon shit and mold. The first floor was vast and empty, broken only by support columns and the ghosts of assembly lines long dismantled. Graffiti covered everything. Snow blew in through broken windows high above, creating weird patterns on the concrete floor. Their footsteps echoed. Alfie went first, flashlight cutting through darkness. Reaper flanked right, Gage left. The others spread out in a loose search pattern. Kate stayed behind Alfie like he'd told her, but he could feel her tension, the barely controlled panic. Vanessa! Kate's voice bounced off concrete and steel. Baby, it's Mom! If you can hear me! Kate! Alfie's voice was low but firm. Not yet. She bit back whatever she was going to say next. He was right, and she knew it. If Brian was here, if he was listening, announcing their presence before they knew the situation was asking for panic. But waiting while her daughter might be within earshot was torture. They cleared the first floor methodically. Nothing. Just debris and evidence of occasional squatters. Old sleeping bags, fast food wrappers, needles in the corners where junkies came to disappear from the world for a while. The stairwell to the second floor was concrete and metal, echo chamber that broadcast every footstep like gunshots. Alfie climbed slowly, flashlight sweeping ahead. Above him, darkness stretched up 3 more stories. Below him, the other riders were spreading through the building, searching offices, storage rooms, bathrooms with toilets that hadn't worked in 15 years. Second floor was offices. Cubicles stripped bare, conference rooms with water-damaged ceiling tiles hanging like broken teeth. Filing cabinets tipped over, their contents scattered across warped linoleum. More graffiti. More emptiness. Alfie's radio crackled. Wicker's voice. 3rd floor east wing. Got something. Whoa! Alfie didn't run. Running made noise, and noise made people do stupid things. But he moved fast, Kate right behind him. They hit the 3rd floor stairwell exit and followed the sound of voices. East wing. Used to be executive offices, nicer than the cubicle farms below. Now it was just more decay, but with bigger windows and better views of nothing. Wicker stood outside a corner office, door closed. He pointed. Heard movement. Someone's in there. Alfie moved to the door, old wood, glass panel on the upper half painted over from inside. He knocked. 3 slow, deliberate strikes. Brian, it's Alfie Rains, from the shop. You remember me? Silence. Then, go away. The voice was thin, wrecked. Brian Turner, but hollowed out. Alfie had heard that voice before. In VA hospitals, in bar parking lots at 3 a.m., in interrogation rooms, The voice of a man who'd gone so far past his breaking point that coming back required more strength than he had left. Can't do that, brother. Not until we know Vanessa's okay. She's fine. Brian's voice cracked. I'm her father. I'm allowed to. Brian. Kate pushed forward. Alfie tried to stop her, but she was past caring about tactics. It's Kate. Open the door, please. No. Immediate. Firm. You'll take her. You'll take her and I can't. The words dissolved into something that might have been crying. Alfie caught Kate's eye, shook his head. Pushing Brian right now would make him retreat further, build walls higher. They needed him to open the door voluntarily, needed him to choose surrender instead of having it forced. Nobody's taking anyone anywhere, Alfie said, voice steady. We just need to see she's safe, that's all. After that, we figure out the rest. The rest is you call the cops. Brian's laugh was ugly. The rest is they arrest me and I never see my daughter again. The rest is she grows up thinking I'm a monster. You grabbed a 12-year-old and put her in your trunk, Reaper said from behind Alfie. His voice was granite. That ship sailed. Reaper. Alfie shot him a look. Not helpful. They needed de-escalation, not truth. But Brian's voice came back different, smaller. I know, God, I know, I wasn't going to hurt her. I needed to talk to her, away from everyone else, away from the lawyers and the court orders and Kate's fucking family telling her I'm dangerous. I'm her father. I have a right. You gave up rights when you broke the restraining order. Kate's voice was shaking, but controlled. You gave them up when you scared our daughter so badly, her best friend is bleeding in a motorcycle garage right now. You gave them up when you made choices, Brian. Your choices, not mine. Not the court's. Yours. Silence. Long enough that Alfie wondered if Brian had shut down completely. Then the door clicked, unlocked. It swung inward slowly. The office was dark, except for a battery-powered camping lantern sitting on an old desk. Vanessa Turner sat on the floor against the far wall, knees pulled to her chest, face streaked with tears. She was wearing her school uniform, navy skirt, white shirt, both covered in dust and grime now. Her eyes were huge, terrified, locked on the doorway. Brian Turner stood between Vanessa and the door. He looked like shit. Unshaven, gaunt, wearing the same clothes he'd probably been wearing for 3 days. His hands were shaking. His eyes were red-rimmed, wild. He wasn't armed, Alfie cataloged that immediately, but he was positioned like a barrier, like he could somehow stop what was coming through force of will alone. Hey, Vanessa. Alfie kept his voice gentle. You okay? Vanessa's eyes flicked to him, then to her mother. Mom? Kate tried to push past Alfie, but he held her back. One wrong move and Brian could snap. He was too close to the edge. I'm here, baby. Kate's voice broke. I'm right here. I didn't hurt her. Oh, Brian's voice was pleading now. I would never, Kate, you know I would never. You put her in a trunk, Brian. Kate's words were quiet, but they hit like hammers. In a trunk, during a snowstorm, and you drove her to an abandoned building. What the fuck did you think was going to happen? I just needed time. Brian's face crumpled. I needed to talk to her without everyone watching, without everyone judging. I'm losing everything, my job, my home, you, and now Vanessa. They're going to take her from me permanently, and I can't. His voice broke. I can't survive that. I can't survive losing the only good thing I ever did. Alfie saw it then, the real danger. Not violence. Despair. Brian wasn't armed. Wasn't planning to hurt Vanessa. Was planning to hurt himself, probably. Was planning some grand gesture that would end with police negotiators and tragedy and a 12-year-old girl traumatized in ways that would take years to unpack. Brian, Alfie stepped into the room, slow, hands visible. I know you're hurting. I know you feel like there's no way forward. But man, look at your daughter right now. Look at her. Go show some bitch, sir. Brian looked. Vanessa was crying, silent sobs shaking her whole body, looking at her father like he was a stranger, like he was the thing nightmares were made of. You do this. You keep this going. And that's the last image she's going to have of you. Forever. That's what she's going to remember. Not the good times, not the bedtime stories or the birthday parties. This, right here, you want that? Brian's hands were shaking worse now. His whole body was shaking. He was maybe 30 seconds from a complete breakdown. Outside, sirens. Still distant, but getting closer. McKinley and his deputies, rolling in like Alfie had known they would. The clock was running out. Whatever happened next had to happen in the next 60 seconds, or it would happen with guns drawn and voices shouting and zero room for mistakes. "Let me get Vanessa out of here," Alfie said quietly. "Let Kate take her. Then you and I sit down, we wait for the sheriff, we figure this out like adults. No drama, no tragedy, just the next step." "The next step is prison." Brian's laugh was hollow. "Maybe." Alfie didn't lie to him. "Probably. But it's not the last step. And if you do the right thing right now, if you let your daughter leave here safe, that counts. Not enough to erase this, but enough that maybe someday she understands you were sick, not evil. Broken, not a monster." "What? Bull?" Brian looked at Vanessa, looked at Kate, looked at Alfie and the riders behind him. These men he used to work alongside, used to share coffee and cigarettes with during breaks, before everything fell apart. Before he became this thing he didn't recognize in mirrors. The sirens were closer now, maybe 2 minutes out. "Okay." Brian's voice was barely a whisper. "Okay." He stepped aside. Kate moved fast, crossed the room in 3 steps and pulled Vanessa into her arms, both of them collapsing into each other. Vanessa was crying hard now, that released kind of crying that happens when safety finally arrives. Kate held her daughter like she'd never let go, whispering things Alfie couldn't hear and didn't need to. Alfie positioned himself between Brian and the door. Not aggressive, just present. A reminder that the choice was made, couldn't be unmade. Brian sank down to the floor, back against the wall where Vanessa had been moments before. He put his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. "I'm sorry," he said. To Kate, to Vanessa, to the room, to God or fate, or whatever forces had brought him to this moment. "I'm so sorry." Kate looked up from Vanessa. Her face was complicated, rage and pity and grief and relief all tangled together. "You should be." Then she guided Vanessa toward the door. Alfie and Reaper escorted them out, back through the office maze, back down the stairs, back toward the loading dock where strobing red and blue lights were already visible through the snow. Sheriff McKinley and 4 deputies rolling up, weapons holstered but hands ready. McKinley took one look at Vanessa in Kate's arms, and his expression shifted from tactical to relief. "She hurt?" "Scared," Kate said. "Cold, but not hurt." "Where's Turner?" Alfie pointed back toward the building. "3rd floor, corner office, east wing. He's unarmed. He's cooperative. He's also about 5 minutes from a complete psychological breakdown, so maybe approach that with some awareness." McKinley nodded to 2 deputies. They headed inside. He looked at Alfie. "You were supposed to wait." "Yeah." Alfie didn't apologize. "We were." McKinley studied him for a long moment. The kind of look that said this conversation wasn't over, but also wasn't happening right now. Then he turned to Kate. "Ambulance is 2 minutes out. We'll get Vanessa checked, make sure she's— I want to go home." Vanessa's voice was small but clear. "I just want to go home." McKinley looked at the paramedics pulling up, looked at Kate. "Let them check her vitals first. Make sure she's not hypothermic. Then you can take her wherever you want." Kate nodded. She carried Vanessa toward the ambulance, still holding her like she might evaporate if she let go. Alfie watched them go. Behind him, the riders were mounting up, engines rumbling back to life. Job done. Time to disappear before someone started asking questions about jurisdiction and vigilantism and all the legal gray areas they'd just danced through. But Alfie stayed. Watching as deputies emerged from the Morrison building with Brian Turner in handcuffs, head down, shuffling through snow like a man walking to his own execution. Watching as they put him in the back of a patrol car. As McKinley read him rights, he probably wasn't processing. Watching as the door closed and Brian Turner's face disappeared behind tinted glass and falling snow. And Alfie wondered, not for the first time, wouldn't be the last, where the line was. Between helping and enabling. Between protection and violence. Between being the good guys and just being guys who made choices they could live with. He didn't have an answer. He never did. But back at the garage, Alice Mercer was waiting with questions Alfie didn't know how to answer. And somewhere in the storm, a family was broken in ways that might never heal. And tomorrow the sun would come up on a town that looked exactly the same but felt fundamentally different. Because tonight, 8 men on motorcycles had hunted through a winter storm to save a child. And they'd found her. And she was safe. But the man who took her, the father who loved her enough to destroy everything, he was headed somewhere dark. Somewhere none of them could follow. And that was the part that would haunt them. Not the rescue. The ruin. 3 days after they pulled Vanessa Turner out of that frozen office building, Alice Mercer showed up at the Hells Riders garage with a backpack full of school books and a question that made everyone stop working. Can I stay here? It was 4:47 p.m. on a Thursday. The kind of gray afternoon where the sun never really came up, just shifted from dark to less dark and back again. Alfie was under a 96 Softail, wrestling with a transmission that had more miles on it than most marriages. He heard the voice, didn't process it at first. Then he did. He rolled out from under the bike on his creeper, looked up at Alice standing in the bay door opening like she had 3 days ago. Except this time she wasn't bleeding and shaking. This time she looked determined. Stay here. Alfie sat up, wiped grease off his hands with a rag that just spread it around. Like, what do you mean, stay here? After school. Alice shifted her backpack. Behind her, winter daylight was already fading. My mom works until 6. Usually I go to Vanessa's house, but now... She stopped. Didn't need to finish. Now Vanessa wasn't going to anyone's house for a while. Now Vanessa was home with her mother, seeing a trauma counselor twice a week, trying to sleep without nightmares. Reaper looked up from the workbench where he'd been cleaning spark plugs. Kid, this isn't a daycare. I know. Alice's voice was steady. I don't need babysitting. I just need somewhere to do homework that isn't empty. The word hung in the air. Empty. Not quiet. Not boring. Empty. The kind of empty that came from being 12 years old and realizing your best friend almost died and your safe world was made of tissue paper and lies. Alfie looked at the other men. Gage shrugged. Wicker kept working on the carburetor in front of him, deliberately not getting involved. Smoke lit a cigarette, watched the conversation like it was theater. Your mom know you're here? Alfie asked. I texted her. Alice pulled out her phone, showed him the screen. A message sent 15 minutes ago. At the library studying with friends? Home by 6. Alfie raised an eyebrow. We're not the library. No. Alice met his eyes. You're better. That was the problem, wasn't it? That was the dangerous thing. A 12-year-old girl deciding that a motorcycle club garage felt safer than the approved alternatives. A child seeking shelter among men who lived outside the boundaries most people respected. It was a liability. It was asking for trouble. It was every kind of wrong that could be articulated. But Alfie looked at Alice's face and saw something he recognized. That expression people got when they just watched the floor drop out from under their understanding of how the world worked. When they realized the authorities couldn't always save you, the system couldn't always protect you, and sometimes the people who looked dangerous were the only ones who showed up. 1 hour, he said finally. You got homework, you do it in the office. You stay out of the work areas. You don't touch anything. And if your mom calls, you tell her the truth about where you are. We're not lying to parents. Alice nodded. Okay, She disappeared into the back office. Alfie listened to her settling in, the sound of a backpack unzipping, textbooks hitting the desk, a chair scraping across concrete floor. Then silence except for the perpetual background noise of the garage, air compressor cycling, radio playing low, tools clanking against metal. Reaper waited until Alice was out of earshot. This is a bad idea. Probably. Alfie slid back under the Softail. Someone's going to ask questions. Social services, school administrators, someone. Let them ask. Alfie, she needs somewhere to be. Alfie's voice came out harder than he meant. For 1 hour a day, she needs somewhere that doesn't feel empty. We can give her that, or we can send her back out there to figure it out herself. Your call. Reaper didn't answer, because it wasn't really a call. It was already decided. Had been the moment Alice walked through that door. The Hells Riders had a reputation for a lot of things. Some deserved, some exaggerated, some earned through decades of choices, both good and catastrophically bad. But one thing was always true. When someone came to them for shelter, they didn't turn them away, even if that someone was 12 years old and supposed to be at the library. Alice showed up the next day too, and the day after that. By the end of the week, it was routine. She'd arrive around 4:30, head straight to the office, spread her homework across the desk, and work in silence while engines roared and men swore and the garage operated around her like she was just another piece of furniture. Mostly, the riders ignored her, did their work, fixed bikes, argued about carburetor settings and suspension geometry. But sometimes Alfie would glance toward the office and catch Alice watching them, studying them, like they were a puzzle she was trying to solve. On Tuesday of the second week, she asked her first real question. "Why'd you help us?" Alfie was refilling his coffee. The garage pot brewed something that tasted like asphalt and regret, but kept you awake. He turned. Alice stood in the office doorway, math textbook in one hand. "Help who?" "Me. Vanessa. Why'd you go looking when I showed up?" Alfie poured coffee he didn't want, buying time. "Because a kid was in trouble. The police were coming. Not fast enough. But you didn't know that." Alice's eyes were sharp, too sharp for 12. You just went, like it was automatic, like you didn't even think about it." Reaper spoke up from across the garage. "Some things you don't think about. You just do." Alice looked at him. "Why?" "Because thinking takes time, and sometimes people don't have time." It was a non-answer disguised as wisdom. Alice saw through it immediately, but she also recognized the wall it represented. These men weren't going to explain themselves to a middle schooler. Not today. Maybe not ever. She went back to her homework, but Alfie saw the gears turning in her head, saw her cataloging details, filing away observations. And he wondered what exactly they'd invited into their space. Not just a kid doing homework. Something more complicated than that. Twang! By the third week, things started shifting in ways nobody had anticipated. Word got around. The way word always did in small towns where everyone knew everyone's business, and most of it was exaggerated by the time it made the second telling. People heard that the Hell's Riders had helped find Vanessa Turner, heard they'd tracked down Brian before the cops even mobilized, heard they'd talked him down, prevented something worse. The story changed depending who was telling it. In some versions, the Riders kicked down doors and dragged Brian out by his throat. In others, they were heroes who saved a child's life. The truth that they'd just shown up and applied pressure in the right places at the right time was too mundane for good gossip. But the result was the same. Suddenly, people were looking at the Hell's Riders differently, not with the usual mix of fear and disapproval, with something closer to respect, maybe even gratitude. Alfie hated it. He was changing oil on a Road King when Sheriff McKinley pulled up in his cruiser. No lights, no drama. Just a visit. McKinley got out, adjusted his belt, walked into the garage like he had business there. "Alfie?" "Sheriff." Alfie didn't look up from the oil pan. McKinley looked around the garage, saw Alice in the office, nose in a textbook, raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. "Got a minute?" "Busy. I'll wait." Alfie finished draining the oil, wiped his hands, stood up. His back protested. Everything protested these days. "What do you need?" McKinley pulled a flask from his jacket, took a sip, offered it to Alfie. Alfie shook his head. McKinley shrugged, put it away. Brian Turner's psych eval came back. Public defenders pushing for treatment instead of prison. Citing mental health crisis, addiction issues, no prior violence. He kidnapped his kid. Custodial interference. Different charge. And with the psych eval, the prosecutor's willing to deal. 18 months in a treatment facility, 5 years probation, permanent supervised visitation only. Alfie felt something cold settle in his gut. That's it? That's the system. McKinley's voice was neutral. He's got no record. He cooperated. He didn't actually hurt her physically. Judge is going to look at that and see someone who needs help, not punishment. He put her in a trunk, drove her to an abandoned building in a snowstorm, and traumatized her so badly she's sleeping in her mother's bed every night because she's afraid of the dark now. But sure, he needs help. I didn't say I agreed with it. McKinley's jaw tightened. I'm just telling you how it's going to play. And Alfie turned away, looked at the Road King like it had answers. It didn't. Just chrome and steel and mechanical problems that could be solved with the right tools. Unlike everything else. There's something else, McKinley said. Turner's asking to see you. That made Alfie turn back. What? At the county facility. Says he wants to apologize. Wants to thank you for... McKinley stopped, searching for words. For not killing him, I guess. For talking him down instead of beating him down. I'm not interested in his thanks. Didn't think you would be. McKinley shifted his weight. But he's going to keep asking. And eventually someone's going to think it's a good idea for closure or healing or whatever psychological bullshit they're selling this week. Figured I'd give you the heads up. Alfie nodded. Appreciated. McKinley started to leave, then stopped. Looked at Alice in the office again. That kid's here a lot. She does homework. Doesn't bother anyone. Her mother, no. Ask her yourself. McKinley studied Alfie for a long moment. The kind of look that said a dozen things without words. Then he just nodded, got back in his cruiser, drove away. Alfie stood in the garage bay watching the cruiser disappear down the street. Behind him, Reaper spoke up. He's going to be a problem. Who? McKinley? Turner. This whole situation, you think it ends with him going to treatment and everything going back to normal? Alfie turned. No, I don't think that. Then what do we do about it? Nothing. Alfie grabbed a fresh oil filter. We do nothing. We fix bikes. We found a kid. We're done. Turner's not our problem anymore. But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. Brian Turner would always be their problem now, because they'd stepped into his life, into his crisis, and you didn't just step back out clean. There were consequences. Always. They just didn't know what shape those consequences would take yet. The shape arrived 2 weeks later in the form of Kate Turner standing in the garage at 5:15 p.m. on a Friday, face pale, hands shaking. He's out. Alfie looked up from the charging system he'd been diagnosing. Kate stood just inside the bay door, backlit by weak winter sunlight. She looked like she'd aged another decade since the Morrison building. What do you mean he's out? Brian. They released him, transferred him to an outpatient program. He's living in a halfway house on 7th Street. Kate's voice was climbing, panic bleeding through. They said he's doing well, making progress. Said he's safe. Outpatient? Reaper set down his wrench. It's been 3 weeks. Emergency overcrowding. They're moving nonviolent offenders to alternative programs. Kate laughed, and it was an ugly sound. Nonviolent, like what he did wasn't violence. Like scaring your daughter so badly she won't sleep alone isn't violent. Alfie wiped his hands on a rag, stood up. Did they tell you this, or did you find out another way? His counselor called, said Brian wanted me to know, wanted to reassure me he's getting help. Kate's hands were fists now. Reassure me. Like I'm the one who needs reassurance. Like I'm the problem. Alice appeared in the office doorway. She'd heard everything. Her face was pale. Is Vanessa okay? Kate looked at Alice like she'd forgotten she was there. I haven't told her yet. I don't know how to tell her. How do I tell my daughter that the man who put her in a trunk is walking around our town again? Restraining order still active? Gage asked. Yes. 500 feet. But he's living 6 blocks from our house. 6 blocks. I drive past his halfway house every time I take Vanessa to therapy. What? Kate's voice cracked. This isn't what was supposed to happen. He was supposed to go away. He was supposed to face consequences. He is facing consequences, Alfie said, but the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. Just not the ones you wanted. Kate looked at him, and her expression shifted, from fear to something harder. I need your help. Kate, not like before. I'm not asking you to hunt him down. I'm asking... She stopped, tried again. I need to know he's staying away. I need to know if he violates the order, if he comes near us, if he does anything. The police can't watch him 24/7, but you... She looked around the garage at these men who'd dropped everything to find her daughter. You see things. You know people. I need eyes I can trust. It was a reasonable request. It was also a terrible idea. Surveillance, even informal surveillance, was a line the club tried not to cross. It created obligations, implied ongoing involvement, turned temporary help into permanent entanglement. Alfie should have said no. Instead, he said, "We'll keep aware." Kate's relief was visible, physical. "Thank you. Thank you so much. I can pay you. Whatever you need. We don't want your money." Reaper's voice was flat. "We want you to be safe. That's the beginning and end of it." Kate nodded, left before she started crying in front of people who'd already seen her broken once. Alice watched her go, then turned to Alfie. "Are you really going to watch him?" "No." Alfie met her eyes. "But we're going to pay attention. There's a difference." Alice didn't look convinced. Neither was Alfie. Paying attention turned into something else entirely over the next 2 weeks. It started small. Gage mentioning he'd seen Brian Turner at the convenience store on Maple, buying cigarettes and energy drinks, looking better than he had in months. Clean, sober, functioning. Wicker reporting that Turner was attending his outpatient sessions regularly, never missed one. Smoke saying he'd spotted Turner at the library using the computers, probably looking for jobs. Brian Turner was, by all observable metrics, getting his shit together, which somehow made everything worse. Because getting better meant getting closer to arguing for increased visitation, meant building a case that he'd addressed his problems, deserved another chance, should be allowed back into Vanessa's life despite the trauma he'd caused. The legal system loved a redemption story, loved second chances for people who checked the right boxes and said the right things in therapy. Never mind the girl who still woke up screaming. Alfie didn't talk about it with the others, but he could feel the tension building. That particular pressure that came when you knew something bad was coming but couldn't articulate what exactly it would look like. Just knew it was approaching like a storm you could smell on the wind but couldn't see yet. The break came on a Tuesday. Alice showed up at 4:30 like always, but something was wrong. She went straight to the office, didn't say hello, didn't make eye contact. Alfie gave her 15 minutes, then walked back there. She was sitting at the desk staring at her unopened backpack. What happened? Alice didn't look up. He was at the school. Every nerve in Alfie's body went tight. Who was at the school? Brian, Vanessa's dad. He was across the street when we got out, just standing there, watching. Alice's voice was flat. Shock, maybe, or the beginning of understanding that the nightmare wasn't over. Vanessa saw him, started crying. Mrs. Chen had to call her mom to come get her early. Did he approach? No, just watched. When the teachers noticed him, he left. But he was there. He knew when school let out. He knew where to stand. Alfie pulled out his phone, called McKinley. It went to voicemail. He left a message. Brian Turner was at Jefferson Middle School this afternoon. Watching. Call me back. He hung up, looked at Alice. You okay? Why does he get to do that? Alice's voice was rising now, anger replacing shock. Why does he get to scare her again? He's supposed to stay away. That's what the order says, 500 feet. The school's in the order. So why is he allowed to just stand there and watch her like she's his property or something? He's not. Alfie kept his voice level. And McKinley will handle it. Like he handled it before? Alice stood up. Like the system handled it? He got 3 weeks in therapy and now he's out walking around like nothing happened. That's not handling it. It's just letting him win. She grabbed her backpack, started for the door. Alfie moved to intercept, but she dodged him. Fast. 12 years old and furious and done with adults who promised things they couldn't deliver. Alice, I'm going home. She didn't stop walking. Tell my mom I left early if she calls. She was gone before Alfie could respond. The garage felt emptier without her, colder. Reaper appeared in the doorway. Heard that. Yeah. Turner's pushing boundaries, seeing what he can get away with. I know, but yes, sheriff's not going to do anything. Technically, he didn't violate. School's 500 feet, he was across the street. That's 600, maybe 650. Reaper lit a cigarette. He's smarter than he looks. Alfie turned, looked at Reaper. What are you saying? I'm saying someone needs to explain the situation to him. In terms he'll understand. No. Alfie, I said no. Alfie's voice went hard. We're not enforcers. We're not going to his halfway house to threaten him. That's exactly what he wants. That's the excuse he needs to play victim, to say the bikers are harassing him, to build a case that Kate sent us after him. So we do nothing? We let him circle that family like a fucking shark? We let the sheriff do his job. Reaper took a long drag, exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. You know what the problem with the sheriff doing his job is? His job has rules, procedures, paperwork. By the time he does his job, Turner might have already done something that can't be undone. That's not our call to make. Isn't it? Reaper met Alfie's eyes. We made it our call when we went looking for Vanessa, when we talked Turner down, when we told Kate we'd keep aware. You don't get to draw a line now just because it's convenient. The thing was, Reaper wasn't wrong. They had made it their call. They'd stepped across that line 3 weeks ago in the snow. Everything since then was just consequences cascading forward. Alfie's phone rang. McKinley. Got your message? The sheriff said. Turner says he was job hunting at the print shop across from the school. Says he didn't know it was dismissal time. Says he left as soon as he realized he was making people uncomfortable. You believe that? Doesn't matter what I believe. Matters what I can prove. And I can't prove he violated the order. So he gets away with it. He gets a warning. I'll make it very clear that coincidentally being near places Vanessa frequents is going to be viewed with extreme suspicion. McKinley paused. But Alfie, between you and me, he's playing this smart. He knows exactly what he's doing, pushing right up to the line without crossing it, building a narrative that he's trying to rebuild his life while his ex-wife and her biker friends are making it difficult. We're not her friends. We helped once. That's not how it looks from the outside. You know what people are saying? That Kate Turner's got the Hell's Riders on speed dial. That you're her personal security. That Brian can't take the piss without one of you watching. McKinley's voice dropped. I'm not saying you're wrong to pay attention. I'm saying be careful how visible that attention is. Because if this goes sideways, Turner's lawyer is going to use it. The call ended. Alfie stood there holding his phone, feeling the weight of choices made weeks ago pressing down like atmosphere. Across the garage, Wicker was watching. Gage, Smoke, all of them waiting to see which direction this was going to go. Waiting to see if Alfie would hold the line or cross it. He didn't know yet. What? The decision got made for him 3 days later. It was 11:47 p.m. Alfie was home. A rented house on the east side that he'd lived in for 8 years without ever bothering to put anything on the walls. He was lying in bed reading a paperback western when his phone lit up. Kate Turner. He almost didn't answer. Nothing good came from phone calls at midnight, but he answered. Alfie? Kate's voice was steady, but he could hear the fear underneath. He's outside my house. Alfie sat up. You sure? I'm looking at him right now, across the street, standing under the broken streetlight, just standing there, staring at my house. Call McKinley. I did. He's sending a unit, but they're 20 minutes out. There was an accident on the highway. Everyone's tied up. Kate's breath hitched. Vanessa's upstairs sleeping. She doesn't know he's out there. But if she wakes up, if she looks out her window and sees him, what? I'm on my way. Alfie was already pulling on jeans, grabbing his boots. Don't go outside, don't engage. Just keep your doors locked and stay away from the windows. Hurry. The line went dead. Alfie called Reaper. Then Gage. By the time he was on his bike, 3 other riders were rolling out from their respective homes. No discussion needed. Discussion. Just the understanding that this was the moment, the point where watching turned into action, where paying attention became intervention. Kate's house was in a subdivision that had been built during the boom years, before the recession hit and left half the lots empty. Nice houses, young families, the kind of neighborhood where people still believed in safety and order. Alfie's Harley felt like an invasion rumbling down those quiet streets. Behind him, Reaper and Gage spread out to approach from different angles. Brian Turner was exactly where Kate said he'd be. Across the street from her house, standing in the shadow of a broken streetlight that the HOA kept meaning to fix but never did. He wore a winter coat, hands in pockets. Just standing there. watching a dark house where his daughter slept. Alfie pulled up across from him, killed his engine. The sudden silence was loud. Reaper and Gage flanked from either side, boxing Turner in without getting too close. Not threatening, not yet, just present. Turner looked at them. His face was different from the Morrison building. Less gaunt, more color. The haunted desperation had been replaced by something harder to read. Determination, maybe, or defiance. Alfie. Turner's voice was steady. Didn't expect to see you. Yeah, you did. Alfie dismounted, boots hitting pavement. That's why you're here. Because you knew Kate would call someone and you knew who that someone would be. I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm on a public street. I can stand wherever I want. Restraining order says different. Order says 500 feet from residence. I measured. I'm 560. Turner pulled out his phone, showed the screen. Use GPS. I'm legally compliant. Smart. Reaper had been right. Turner was playing this calculated, pushing boundaries with precision, making it about rules and measurements instead of intent and intimidation. Why are you here, Brian? Alfie kept his voice neutral. Because she's my daughter. Turner's voice cracked just enough to sound genuine. Because I love her, and I want her to know I'm trying, that I'm getting better, that I'm not the man who scared her. Standing outside her house at midnight isn't showing her you're better. It's showing her you're still the thing she's afraid of. Brian, I just want to see where she lives. That's all. I haven't lived in this house since the divorce. Kate got it in the settlement. I wanted to see it, see the lights, know she's safe. Turner's hands came out of his pockets. Empty. Harmless. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm trying to heal. It was a good performance. Almost convincing. The kind of thing that played well in therapy sessions and court hearings. Remorseful father seeking connection. Desperate man trying to rebuild. But Alfie had spent 30 years reading people. In combat, in bars, in garages where men brought their bikes and their problems. He knew the difference between genuine and performance. This was performance. You're going to leave now, Alfie said. You're going to go back to your halfway house. You're going to stay away from this street. And you're going to stop testing the boundaries of that restraining order. Because the next time you show up somewhere you're technically allowed to be but shouldn't be, someone's going to make the case that you're stalking. And then your outpatient program turns into prison time. Turner smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You threatening me? Educating you. On what? On how this looks from the outside. You standing here in the dark watching your ex-wife's house? You hanging around the school? You everywhere you're allowed to be, but know you shouldn't be. Alfie took a step closer. You think you're building a case for redemption. You're actually building a case for violation. And when the judge sees it, all your progress won't mean shit. Won't? What's such a meets? For a long moment, Turner just looked at him. Then his eyes shifted to Reaper and Gage flanking like wolves. Back to Alfie. You know what I think? Turner's voice dropped. I think you like this. I think you like playing hero. Like Kate calling you in the middle of the night, depending on you. Like having a reason to start your bikes and roll out like you're saving the world. He laughed, bitter. But you're not heroes. You're just bikers who happened to be convenient once. And now you're in over your heads pretending you can control a situation you don't understand. We understand it fine. Reaper's voice came from the shadows. You're a man who hurt his family, who's trying to manipulate his way back into their lives. Who thinks therapy and sobriety give him the right to forgiveness? We've seen it before. Ends the same way every time. Which is, either you figure out that redemption means leaving them alone, or you push too far and someone stops you permanently. Your choice. Now that was a threat. Clear, unambiguous, the kind that could be recorded, reported, used as evidence. Alfie shot Reaper a look, but the damage was done. Turner pulled out his phone again. Interesting. You know I'm recording this conversation, right? Have been since you pulled up. Every word, every threat. The temperature dropped 20 degrees. Turner smiled wider. See? I learned something in therapy. Documentation. Recording your experiences. Building a case for when people try to gaslight you or intimidate you. He held up the phone. So now I've got bikers threatening me on a public street while I'm legally compliant with a court order. That plays real well in front of a judge when I file for increased visitation. When I show I'm being harassed by my ex-wife's associates while trying to rebuild my life. Amrtasi. He'd played them perfectly, positioned himself as a victim, got them to show up and make it worse, recorded evidence of intimidation. It was calculated, strategic, exactly the kind of move a desperate man wouldn't make, but a smart one would. Alfie felt the trap close around them. Turner pocketed his phone, started walking toward a car parked 2 houses down. Have a good night, gentlemen. I'll be sure to include this interaction in my next session with my counselor. I'm sure they'll find it very illuminating. He got in his car, a different vehicle than the sedan they'd tracked, this one newer, probably borrowed from the halfway house, and drove away. Slow. Legal speed limit, turn signals, everything by the book. The 3 riders stood in the street watching taillights disappear around a corner. Fuck. Reaper said it for all of them. Alfie's phone rang. McKinley. Sheriff unit just pulled up to Kate Turner's street. They see you there? Yeah. Jesus Christ, Alfie. What the hell are you doing? Our job. Your job is fixing motorcycles. Your job is not playing security for domestic situations you have no authority over. McKinley's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. Get out of there before my deputies have to explain why a motorcycle club is conducting surveillance in a residential neighborhood at midnight. Turner was here first, and he left because the sight of you scared him away, which means you interfered with a law enforcement situation, which means if he decides to press charges for intimidation or harassment, I can't protect you. Alfie hung up. They rode back to the garage in silence, the kind of silence that came from realizing you'd made exactly the wrong move at exactly the wrong time, that you'd been outsmarted by someone you'd underestimated. Back at the garage, Alfie killed his engine and just sat there on his bike for a long moment. Behind him, Reaper and Gage did the same. Finally, Wicker spoke from the doorway where he'd been waiting. How bad? He recorded us, threatened us into threatening him. Now he's got evidence Kate's using us to harass him. Shit. Yeah. Gage lit a cigarette. So what do we do, Atsan? That was the question, the same question they'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. What do we do when the system fails? When the rules protect the wrong people? When doing the right thing looks exactly like doing the wrong thing from the outside? Alfie didn't have an answer, but Alice Mercer did. She stepped out of the shadows near the office, and every man in that garage froze. She'd been there the whole time, listening, waiting. You do what you should have done from the start, Alice said. Her voice was calm, too calm for 12. You stop playing by rules he's not following. You stop worrying about looking like the good guys. And you make sure he knows that some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Reaper looked at Alfie. Kid's got a point. Reaper looked. Kid's 12 years old, Alfie shot back. And she's talking about violence. I'm not talking about violence. Alice stepped into the light. I'm talking about consequences. Real ones. Not therapy, not warnings. Things that actually change behavior. That's not how this works. But this. Then how does it work? Alice's voice rose. Because from where I'm standing, he put Vanessa in a trunk, traumatized her, got 3 weeks of consequences, and now he's out stalking her house and playing victim when people try to stop him. That's how the system works. That's what justice looks like. And it's bullshit. She wasn't wrong. That was the problem. A 12-year-old could see what the adults were pretending not to, that the system had failed, that Brian Turner had found the loopholes and was exploiting them, that without someone willing to operate outside official channels, Vanessa Turner would spend the rest of her childhood looking over her shoulder. But crossing that line meant becoming exactly what people feared motorcycle clubs were. Meant confirming every stereotype, every assumption, every reason parents told their kids to stay away from men like them. Alfie looked at Alice, really looked at her, saw not a child but someone who'd had her innocence burned away in a single afternoon. Someone who'd learned that the world was brutal and unfair, and the only thing that mattered was power, and who was willing to use it. Go home, he said quietly. This isn't your weight to carry. It's been my weight since the moment I watched him shove Vanessa in that trunk and couldn't stop him. Alice's eyes were bright, but no tears fell. You want to pretend you're different from him? Then be different. Don't just watch, don't just warn, actually stop him. She left before anyone could respond. The garage fell silent except for the sound of wind outside and the distant traffic on Hamilton Avenue. Reaper broke it first. She's right. She's 12. Doesn't make her wrong. Reaper stubbed out his cigarette. We got two choices here, Alfie. We back off, let this play out through official channels, and hope Kate and Vanessa survive whatever Turner does next. Or we handle it. Really handle it. The way we would have 20 years ago before we started worrying about optics and legal exposure. Handling it means crossing lines we can't uncross. Some lines need crossing, Chez. Alfie looked around the garage at these men he'd ridden with for years, saw their faces in the dim light, saw the calculations happening behind their eyes. They were waiting for him to decide, waiting for permission or orders or some signal about which direction this went next. He thought about Vanessa Turner sleeping in her mother's bed because she was afraid of the dark, about Alice Mercer carrying rage that would poison her for years if she didn't find a way to release it, about Brian Turner stalking his own family with a phone recording evidence of his victimhood, about how the right thing and the legal thing weren't always the same thing, about how sometimes good men had to make bad choices to protect people who couldn't protect themselves, about how he'd joined this club 30 years ago, specifically because they operated in the spaces where official channels didn't reach. We handle it, Alfie said finally, but we do it smart. No recordings, no witnesses, no evidence, and nobody talks about it after. Not to each other, not to anyone. Reaper nodded. So did Gage. Wicker, Smoke, the whole room. They'd just crossed the line. There was no going back now. The plan was simple. Too simple, maybe, which should have been the first warning sign. They'd wait until Brian Turner left the halfway house for his Thursday evening AA meeting. The one he never missed. The one his outpatient program required. The one that ran from 7 to 8:30 at the community center on Riverside. During that 90-minute window, Gage would intercept him in the parking lot. Just talk. Just a conversation between two men who used to work on motorcycles together. No threats on record this time. No phones. No witnesses. Just a very clear explanation of what would happen if Turner continued his campaign of legal stalking. Not violence, not harm, just consequences that existed outside official channels. The kind of consequences that came from communities taking care of their own when the system couldn't. That was the plan. It fell apart in the first 5 minutes. Gage showed up at the community center at 7:02 p.m. The parking lot was half full, cars belonging to various support groups that met there every evening. He spotted Turner's borrowed sedan immediately, parked under a light that flickered intermittently. Gage pulled his truck into a spot 3 rows over, killed the engine, waited. By 7:15, the meeting would be starting. By 7:20, Gage would approach the car, wait for Turner to return, have the conversation. Simple. Except at 7:08, Turner emerged from the community center, walking fast, phone pressed to his ear. Not the casual pace of someone who'd just arrived. The urgent stride of someone leaving. He got in his sedan, fired it up, pulled out of the parking lot, headed north. Gage swore, started his truck, followed at a distance. This wasn't the plan. But plans changed. You adapted. Turner drove with purpose, no hesitation. North on Riverside, east on Hamilton, then into the industrial zone where everything had started 3 weeks ago. Gage stayed back, lights off when he could risk it, just taillights ahead in the dark. His radio crackled. Alfie's voice. Status? He's mobile. Didn't stay for the meeting. Heading east toward the old factories. Mobile. Didn't stay for... Silence. Then, fall back. Something's wrong. But Gage was already too deep. Already committed. Turner's car turned into the Morrison manufacturing lot. The same lot where they'd found his abandoned sedan the night Vanessa was taken. The same building where they'd talked him down. Why would he come back here? Gage parked on the street, grabbed the flashlight from his glove box, approached on foot. Turner's car sat in the same spot as before. Driver's door open, interior light on. Empty. Gage's instincts screamed. This was wrong. All of it. Set up or trap or something worse. He should have left. Should have called Alfie, regrouped, reassessed. Instead, he walked toward the building. The loading dock door was open, the same one they'd used 3 weeks ago. Inside, darkness and that familiar smell of rust and decay. Gage's flashlight cut through the black, illuminating concrete and graffiti and nothing else. Then he heard it. Voices. Coming from upstairs. He climbed the stairwell slow, every instinct telling him to turn around. Second floor. Nothing. Third floor. The voices were clear now. Two people. One was definitely Turner. The other... Gage reached the third-floor hallway, followed the sound to the corner office. The door was open. Light spilled out. Not the battery lantern from before, but something brighter. Electrical. Someone had run power up here. He looked inside and his world tilted sideways. Brian Turner stood in the middle of the office. But he wasn't alone. Sheriff McKinley was with him. And between them, spread across a folding table that definitely hadn't been here before, were photographs. Dozens of them. Surveillance photos. Photos of the Hells Riders garage. Photos of Alfie. Of Reaper. Of Gage himself. Time-stamped, dated, organized into neat rows. Photos of Alice Mercer entering and leaving the garage, circled in red marker. Jesus Christ! Gage's voice came out before he could stop it. Both men turned. McKinley's hand went to his service weapon but didn't draw. Turner's expression shifted from surprise to something that looked almost like satisfaction. Gage! McKinley's voice was tired. You need to leave. Right now. What the fuck is this? This is an investigation you just contaminated by being here. McKinley moved between Gage and the table, blocking his view of the photographs. This is you following Brian Turner after I specifically told your club to back off. This is you giving me a massive problem. Gage's brain was trying to process too much information at once. Investigation. Surveillance photos. Alice circled in red. None of it made sense. You're working with him? I'm working a case. Turner's cooperating. That's all you need to know. Cooperating with what? Gage's voice was rising. You're investigating us? For what? McKinley didn't answer. Didn't need to. The photos answered for him. The Hells Riders garage with a 12-year-old girl coming and going daily. No parents visible. No official supervision. Just men with criminal records and a child who shouldn't be there. From the outside, it looked exactly like what it wasn't. This is bullshit. Gage took a step forward. Alice comes to do homework. That's it. We're not... Whatever you think is happening isn't happening. That's what everyone says. Turner's voice was quiet. That's what they all say when they get caught. Caught doing what? Letting a kid use our office? Giving her a safe place after school? Wait. Safe? Turner's laugh was ugly. A motorcycle club garage is safe? Men with assault records, drug charges, weapons violations, that's safe for a 12-year-old girl? Gage felt his hands curl into fists. McKinley saw it, moved his hand closer to his weapon. Don't. McKinley's voice went hard. You take one step toward him and I will arrest you. I will charge you with witness intimidation, interference with an investigation, and anything else I can make stick. Walk away, Gage. Right now. But you set us up. Gage was looking at Turner. That whole thing at Kate's house. The recording. You wanted us to show up. You wanted evidence we were involved. I wanted to protect my daughter from people who have no business being in her life. Turner's voice was steady, rehearsed. Therapy speak. From people who are inserting themselves into a family situation they don't understand. Using a traumatized child to justify their involvement. We found Vanessa when you put her in a fucking trunk. And I've apologized for that. I've taken responsibility. I'm in treatment. I'm doing everything the court asked. Turner gestured to the photos. But you've inserted yourself into my daughter's life. Into my ex-wife's life. You've made yourself indispensable, so they depend on you. So you have access. And now you've got another little girl spending hours every day in your garage. Unsupervised. Alone with grown men. You don't see how that looks? Gage did see. That was the nightmare of it. From a certain angle, with the right framing, it looked exactly like grooming. Like predatory behavior. Like everything society feared about men like them. Call Alfie. McKinley's voice cut through. Tell him I need to see all of you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the station. All of you. And tell him to bring a lawyer because this is formal. Gage backed toward the door, phone already out. He didn't run, but he moved fast. Down the stairs, through the building, across the parking lot to his truck. His hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. He called Alfie. It rang 4 times before connecting. We got a problem. Yes, that's it. By the time Gage got back to the garage, Alfie had already called an emergency meeting. Every rider in the club was there by 8:30 p.m. 16 men total, though only 8 had been involved in finding Vanessa. The others were being brought up to speed fast. Alfie stood in the center of the garage, Gage next to him, retelling what he'd seen. The photographs. McKinley. Turner's accusations. The word investigation hanging in the air like a guillotine blade. They think we're running some kind of operation. Gage's voice was hoarse from chain smoking on the drive back. Predatory shit. Using the Vanessa situation to gain access, to build trust. And now Alice showing up every day. Alice is doing homework. Wicker's voice was sharp. That's it. We're not... I know that. You know that. But from the outside? Gage gestured helplessly. 12-year-old girl, no parents, motorcycle club, men with records. How do you think that plays? Boom. Silence. The kind that came from realizing you'd walked into a trap you'd helped build yourself. Reaper lit a cigarette, hand steady, but his jaw tight. Turner engineered this, the whole thing. He positions himself at Kate's house knowing we'll show up, records us threatening him, then goes to McKinley with a narrative. Dangerous bikers harassing a recovering father, using his daughter's trauma as an excuse to embed themselves in the family's life. And now Alice gives them a pattern. Smoke's voice was grim. One kid leads to another. Looks like recruitment. Looks like we're building relationships with vulnerable children. Alfie's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, jaw tightening. Kate. Bro, papush que passes. He answered on speaker. Kate's voice filled the garage, thin and strained. Sheriff McKinley just left my house. He was asking about you. About the club. About how often you've been around Vanessa. About whether I felt pressured to involve you. What did you tell him? The truth. That you helped when I needed it. That I called you. That you've been... She stopped. He kept asking about Alice. About why a 12-year-old is spending time at your garage. He made it sound like something wrong was happening. Like I should be concerned. Are you? Alfie's voice was quiet. Concerned? Long pause. Too long. I don't know what to think right now. I don't know what's real and what's Brian manipulating everyone. But Alfie, McKinley said if I keep involving you, if I keep calling you instead of going through proper channels, he might have to report me to child services for judgment issues, for exposing Vanessa to inappropriate influences. The words hit like bullets. He's turning you into a weapon against yourself, Reaper said, making you choose between protecting Vanessa and asking for help. I know, Kate's voice cracked, but what choice do I have? If I lose custody because I involved you, if Brian gets Vanessa because I made bad decisions, you didn't make bad decisions. Alfie's voice was firm. You made the only decisions available when the system failed you. The system's working now, though. That's what McKinley said. Brian's in treatment. He's complying with the order. The only people not complying are... She couldn't finish. Are us, Alfie thought. The only people breaking protocol are the people who helped. Kate, Alfie kept his voice level. Whatever you need to do to protect Vanessa, you do it. If that means cutting contact with us, you do it. We understand. I'm sorry. She was crying now. I'm so sorry. You helped, and now you're being punished for it, and I don't know how to fix this. Not your job to fix it. Alfie looked around the garage at men watching him, waiting for direction. We'll figure it out. You focus on your daughter. He hung up. The garage stayed silent for a long moment. Then Polly, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. We need to shut this down. Stop letting Alice come here. Distance ourselves from the whole situation before it gets worse. It's already worse. Wicker shook his head. The photos are already taken. The investigation's already open. Shutting the door on Alice now just looks like we're hiding something. Yes. So what? We keep letting a 12-year-old hang around during an active investigation into whether we're grooming children? Polly's voice rose. That's your solution? Polly's voice, I'm saying there's no good move here, Wicker shot back. We're fucked either way. Alfie held up a hand. Silence fell. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., we meet with McKinley. All of us. We answer questions honestly. We provide whatever documentation he needs. Documentation of what? Gage interrupted. That Alice shows up and does homework? That we don't have any formal oversight or protocol for having a minor in the garage? That we never thought we needed it because we're not doing anything wrong? Exactly that. Alfie's voice was steel. We tell the truth. We cooperate. We show we have nothing to hide. And if that's not enough, Reaper asked, if Turner's built a case that looks convincing enough to open a full investigation, if they start pulling our records, interviewing Alice, talking to her mother? Alfie didn't have an answer. The garage door rattled. Everyone turned. Alice Mercer stood in the entrance, backpack over her shoulder, face pale. She'd been standing there for how long? Heard how much? Alice, Alfie moved toward her. What are you doing here? It's almost 9. I heard. Her voice was small. My mom called Vanessa's mom. They were talking about the sheriff's visit, about how you're being investigated. Because of me, not because of you. Alfie crouched down to her level. Because of choices adults made. You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did you. Alice's eyes were bright with tears that wouldn't fall. You helped. That's all you did. You helped. And now everyone's punishing you for it. Sometimes that's how it works. That's not fair. No, it's not. Alice looked around the garage at all these men watching her. Men who'd become something like protection in a world that had revealed itself to be hostile and unpredictable. Men who were now being destroyed for providing exactly that protection. I won't come back, she said quietly. I'll tell the sheriff I just showed up and you tried to send me away, but I kept coming. I'll tell them you never did anything wrong. Alice, Alfie stopped her. You don't have to protect us. Yes, I do. Her voice was fierce now. Because nobody else will. Because the system is broken, and the sheriff is helping the wrong person, and someone has to tell the truth. Reaper spoke from behind Alfie. Kid, the truth doesn't matter if nobody believes it. And right now, Turner's built a narrative that's simpler and scarier than the truth. You fighting it just makes you look coached. So I'm supposed to do nothing? I'm supposed to let him win? You're supposed to go home. Alfie's voice was gentle but firm. You're supposed to be 12 years old and let the adults handle this. The adults aren't handling it. Alice's voice broke. The adults are making it worse. She wasn't wrong. That was the knife twist. A 12-year-old could see the situation clearer than any of them because she wasn't tangled up in the politics and procedures and legal exposure. She just saw the simple truth. Good people were being punished for helping. Alice left without another word. Alfie watched her disappear into the darkness beyond the garage door, watched her become just another shadow in a town full of them. He turned back to the assembled riders. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Everyone shows. Everyone cooperates. And nobody talks to Turner or McKinley before then. Clear? Nods around the circle. They disperse slowly, mounting bikes, starting engines, rolling out into the cold March night. Within 15 minutes, the garage was empty except for Alfie and Reaper. This is bad. Well, Reaper didn't frame it as a question. Yeah. Wo or sumibasi charche. We lose this investigation. We lose everything. The garage, the club. Some of us might lose custody of our own kids. Reaper pulled out his phone, stared at a photo on the lock screen. His daughter, 8 years old, living with his ex-wife 2 states over. They'll use this as proof we're unfit. As proof MC culture is dangerous for children. I know. So what's the play here, Alfie? What's the move that gets us out? Alfie looked around the empty garage. Oil stains on the floor, tool chests against the walls, motorcycles in various states of repair. This place had been home for 20 years, had been sanctuary, had been the place where broken men came to rebuild themselves around chrome and steel and brotherhood. Now it was evidence in an investigation that could destroy them all. I don't know, Alfie admitted. I honestly don't know. Atsak. The meeting at the sheriff's station started at 9:04 a.m. 8 riders crammed into a conference room that smelled like burned coffee and institutional cleaning products. McKinley sat across from them, flanked by a detective Alfie didn't recognize, and a woman in a suit who introduced herself as Carol Henderson from Child Protective Services. That's when Alfie knew how bad this really was. McKinley laid it out clinical and precise. Anonymous tip, though everyone knew it was Turner, regarding a minor frequenting a motorcycle club garage without parental supervision. Initial investigation revealed a pattern of contact between club members and the family of Vanessa Turner, beginning with the girl's recovery 3 weeks prior. Secondary minor, Alice Mercer, age 12, confirmed spending multiple hours per week at the club location. No formal programs, no oversight, just access. "We're not running a daycare, Chuffy," Alfie said. "We're not running anything. Alice shows up, does homework in the office, leaves. That's it." "And her mother knows about this?" Henderson's voice was professional, neutral, which somehow made it worse than if she'd been hostile. "Yes. She texts her mother, tells her where she is. Texts us saying she's at the library." Henderson consulted her notes. "Not text saying she's at a motorcycle club garage." Silence. Because yes, Alice lied to her mother. Because what 12-year-old wouldn't when the truth sounded wrong even though it wasn't? "Have any of you undergone background checks for working with minors?" Henderson continued. "Are you registered as a youth organization? Do you carry liability insurance for having children on premises?" More silence. Because of course they didn't. Because they weren't a youth organization. They were mechanics who'd helped once and accidentally became something they never intended to be. The detective leaned forward. His nameplate read Barnes. "Let's talk about the night you confronted Brian Turner outside his ex-wife's residence. 3 of you. Midnight. Blocked him in. Made verbal threats that were recorded." "We didn't threaten him," Gage said. "We told him to stay away from his family." "And who appointed you to enforce a restraining order?" "Nobody. We were just inserting yourselves into a domestic situation you had no legal authority over." Barnes pulled out a folder, spread photographs across the table, the same surveillance photos Gage had seen at Morrison. "You've been watching Turner, following him, positioning yourselves between him and his family. That's harassment. That's stalking. That's exactly the behavior the restraining order was designed to prevent." "He put his daughter in a trunk." Reaper's voice was low, dangerous, and he was arrested and charged and is complying with his treatment program. Barnes tapped the photos. "You, on the other hand, are operating outside the law, using your involvement in the initial recovery to justify continued intervention, and in the process, you've created an environment where minors are spending unsupervised time with adults who have criminal records." Alfie felt the trap tightening. Every defense sounded like an excuse. Every explanation like justification for something that looked worse the more you examined it. Henderson spoke again. "I'll be frank with you. If this were any other organization, a church, a community center, a school, having a child spend unsupervised time there would trigger an immediate investigation. The only reason we're having this conversation, instead of already pulling Alice from your location, is professional courtesy to Sheriff McKinley. We haven't done anything wrong." Wicker's voice was tight. "Maybe not. But you've created conditions where wrong things could happen. And perception matters, especially when children are involved." Henderson closed her folder. "Here's what's going to happen. Effective immediately, Alice Mercer is not to be on your premises without her mother present. If she shows up, you turn her away and contact her mother directly. No exceptions." "She'll just lie about where she is," Gage said. "Go somewhere else unsupervised." "Hey, that's between her and her mother. It's not your problem anymore." Henderson stood. "Additionally, we'll be conducting follow-up interviews with both Alice and Vanessa, separate from parents. Standard protocol for these situations." "These situations?" Alfie's voice was ice. "What situations?" "Look, situations where adults have inappropriate access to minors." Henderson's expression didn't change. "I'm not saying you're predators. I'm saying the circumstances require investigation. If you're innocent, the interviews will prove it." She left. Barnes followed. Only McKinley remained, looking at the 8 men across the table with something that might have been pity. "You should have backed off when I told you to," he said quietly. "A child was in danger," Alfie shot back. "And you helped, and I'm grateful. But you didn't stop helping. You kept inserting yourselves. And now Turner's weaponized that against you." McKinley stood, collected his files. "I can't protect you from this. The optics are too bad. CPS is involved now, which means mandatory reporting, formal investigation, the whole apparatus. Best thing you can do is cooperate completely and hope they don't find anything that looks worse than it is." There's nothing to find. Then you'll be fine. McKinley didn't sound convinced. But Alfie, keep your boys away from Turner, away from Kate and Vanessa, away from Alice. Because if anything happens, if Turner ends up with even a scratch he can attribute to you, this investigation becomes criminal, and I won't be able to stop it. He left them sitting in the conference room. It was surrounded by the ghosts of good intentions turned into evidence. The news hit the local paper 3 days later. Not front page, but close enough. Motorcycle club under investigation following child safety concerns. The article was vague on specifics but heavy on implications. Anonymous sources. Concerned parents. Children spending time in unregulated environments. The Hells Riders named explicitly. By that afternoon, the garage was empty except for the core members. No customers. No drop-ins. Nobody wanted to be associated with the place currently under investigation by Child Protective Services. Alfie's phone rang constantly. Other chapters calling to ask what the hell was going on. National club leadership demanding explanations. His ex-wife's lawyer leaving messages about revisiting custody arrangements for a daughter he barely saw anyway. The club was bleeding, not from external attack but from internal hemorrhage, the slow leak of reputation and trust and community standing. And through it all, Brian Turner went to his therapy sessions, complied with his treatment program, and slowly built a case for increased visitation with Vanessa. Because while the Hells Riders were being investigated for overreach and inappropriate contact, Turner was demonstrating rehabilitation and growth. He'd played it perfectly. Reaper found Alfie in the garage at 11 p.m., sitting on a stool staring at a disassembled engine he'd been supposed to rebuild 3 days ago. "We need to talk," Reaper said. Alfie didn't look up. About what? About cutting our losses. About shutting this down before it destroys the club completely. Shutting what down? All of it. The investigation, the involvement, Turner. Reaper's voice was measured, careful. He's the root cause. Remove him. The problem evaporates. Now Alfie looked up. Remove him how? However we need to. Reaper met his eyes. I'm not talking about anything permanent. I'm talking about convincing him to leave, to drop the complaints, stop the investigation, move out of town, and start over somewhere that doesn't include his ex-wife and daughter. And if he doesn't want to be convinced, then we make the cost of staying higher than the cost of leaving. Alfie stood, felt his knees protest. That's exactly what he wants. He's baiting us, waiting for us to cross the line so he can document it, report it, prove his narrative that we're dangerous. We are dangerous. Reaper's voice went hard. That's what everyone forgets. We're not social workers. We're not therapists. We're men who've done violent things for better reasons than protecting children. And right now, playing by rules that Turner's manipulating is destroying us. So we what? Grab him? Threaten him? Beat him until he agrees to leave? If that's what it takes. And when he reports it, when the investigation becomes criminal, when we all go to prison and the club gets classified as a criminal organization and everything we built gets seized? Reaper was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if he can't report it? The temperature in the garage dropped. Alfie stared at Reaper, trying to read whether he was serious or just venting, but Reaper's expression was stone. He meant it. No. Alfie's voice was final. We're not doing that. We're not becoming what people fear we are. We might not have a choice. We always have a choice. Do we? Reaper moved closer. Because from where I'm standing, our choices are, we back off and let Turner win, let him get access to Vanessa, let him continue stalking his family while we get destroyed for trying to help. Or we remove the threat permanently and deal with the consequences. The consequences are prison, life prison. The consequences of doing nothing are watching everything we built burn down because we helped someone. Reaper's voice cracked slightly. My ex-wife's lawyer already filed for emergency custody review. Using the investigation as evidence, I'm unfit. I might lose my daughter because we tried to save someone else's. Alfie felt that land like a punch. He hadn't known, hadn't asked how deep the damage went for each of them individually. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Sorry doesn't help. Action helps. Reaper pulled out his phone, showed Alfie the screen. A text from a number Alfie didn't recognize. Turner's at the Starlight Motel, room 14. Alone. Wednesday nights, the halfway house has late group. He stays out until midnight. Who sent that? Does it matter? Reaper pocketed his phone. Point is, we have an opportunity. Wednesday night. No witnesses, no cameras, just us and him and a conversation about how leaving town is in everyone's best interest. What? But I'ma sit beside. And if the conversation doesn't work? Reaper didn't answer. Didn't need to. The answer was written in his expression, in the set of his shoulders, in the calculated tone of his voice. He was serious. He was actually proposing they hurt Brian Turner, maybe worse than hurt. Alfie looked around the garage. This space that had been sanctuary, that had meant something beyond just fixing motorcycles. Looked at the office where Alice had done homework, where she'd felt safe in a world that suddenly wasn't. Looked at the tools and the bikes and the oil stains and all the physical evidence of choices made over decades. And he thought about turning into the thing people feared, about crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed, about becoming the monster in someone else's story. But he also thought about Vanessa Turner sleeping in her mother's bed, terrified of the dark. About Alice Mercer's rage that had nowhere to go. About his brothers losing their children because they'd helped someone. About how the system had failed, how playing by the rules had gotten them investigated, while the man who actually hurt a child was being rewarded for compliance. Wednesday night, Alfie heard himself say, just a conversation, nothing more. Reaper nodded. Just a conversation. But they both knew it was a lie. They both knew that once they walked into that motel room, whatever happened next would define them forever. Would transform the Hell's Riders from people who helped into people who hurt. And the worst part was, Alfie couldn't see another way forward. The system had made its choice. Now they had to make theirs. Even if it destroyed them. Even if it proved Turner right all along. Wednesday night, 10:47 p.m. The Starlight Motel sat on the eastern edge of town like a monument to failure, its neon sign flickering pink and blue against low clouds that promised rain. Alfie killed his engine in the parking lot, listening to the tick of cooling metal. Beside him, Reaper and Gage did the same. 3 Harleys, 3 men, 1 motel room. Room 14's door was open. Not just unlocked, open. 6 inches of gap showing darkness beyond, the interior light off. Alfie felt every instinct he'd developed over 53 years start screaming. This was wrong. This was a trap. This was exactly what they shouldn't walk into. But they'd come this far, made this choice, crossed this line. He dismounted, boots hitting wet pavement. March rain had started an hour ago, cold and relentless. His leather cut was already soaked. Reaper flanked right, Gage left. Moving like they'd done this before, because they had, in different wars, different countries, different lives that felt like they'd belonged to other people. Alfie approached the door, every nerve firing, pushed it open slowly with his boot. The light from the parking lot illuminated carpet first. Dark stains, fresh, wet, blood. Fuck! Gage's voice was barely audible. Alfie stepped inside, hand reaching for the light switch. The overhead fluorescent buzzed to life, revealing a motel room that had been professionally staged to look like an aftermath. Overturned chair, lamp knocked off the nightstand, bed sheets pulled half off the mattress. And blood, not pooled, not enough to indicate serious injury, but splattered. On the carpet, on the wall near the door, on the bathroom tile visible through the open doorway. Brian Turner's phone sat on the floor beside the bed, screen facing up, camera light glowing red. Recording. Alfie's stomach dropped into his boots. Out! Now! Everyone out! But Reaper was already moving toward the phone, reaching down. We need to... Don't touch it! Alfie's voice cracked like a whip. Don't touch anything! This is a setup! This whole thing is a... The bathroom door slammed shut. All 3 men spun toward the sound, hands going to weapons they weren't carrying because they'd agreed this was just conversation, just talk, just persuasion. The door opened again slowly. Brian Turner stepped out. He looked wrong, face too pale, eyes too wide, breathing too fast. And blood, real blood, not staged, running down his left arm from a wound somewhere under his sleeve. He held a kitchen knife in his right hand, the blade dark with his own blood. You came. Turner's voice shook. I knew you would. I told them you would, and you did. Alfie held up both hands, palms out. Brian, put the knife down. Whatever you think is happening here, I know exactly what's happening. Turner's laugh was unhinged, chemical. You came to kill me. That's what you planned. That's what you told each other. Remove the threat. Make me disappear. I heard you. I have recordings of everything. Boy, we came to talk. Alfie's voice stayed level even as his brain raced through scenarios, exits, ways this could end that didn't involve prison or worse. That's all. Just talk. Liar. Turner raised the knife, pointed it at Alfie like an accusation. You came because I'm ruining you, because I'm exposing what you really are. Predators who use trauma as an access point, who insert yourselves into vulnerable families, who groom children under the guise of protection. That's not Alice Mercer, 12 years old, spending hours in your garage, lying to her mother. You made her dependent on you, made her think you're safe when you're the danger. The Turner's hand tightened on the knife. And Vanessa, my daughter, you turned her against me, made her afraid when she should love me, destroyed my family so you could play hero. Reaper moved slightly left. Gauge right. Surrounding without seeming to, combat instincts kicking in. But Turner saw it, adjusted his position to keep all three in his peripheral vision. Don't. Turner's voice rose. Don't move. Don't come closer. I will use this. I've already used it. He gestured to his bleeding arm with the knife. Self-defense. You broke into my room, threatened me. I defended myself. It's all on camera. Alfie glanced at the phone, still recording, red light steady and damning. Whatever happened in this room was being captured. Whatever they did or said would be used. Turner had orchestrated this perfectly, made it look like they'd come for violence, staged evidence of a struggle, wounded himself to justify lethal self-defense. All he needed was for one of them to move wrong, to grab for the knife, to do anything that looked like aggression on camera. We're leaving. Alfie took a step backward. This was a mistake. We're going and this ends here. No. Turner moved between them and the door. You don't get to leave. You don't get to walk away from this. You came to kill me. I defended myself, and now... His voice broke. Now everyone sees what you really are. Nobody's dying tonight. Alfie's voice was steel. You want to expose us? You already did. The investigation, the newspaper, child services, you won. You destroyed our reputation. That's enough. Put down the knife and let us leave. Wait. It's not enough. Turner's eyes were wild now, pupils blown wide. He was high on something, pills probably, or whatever cocktail his halfway house hadn't caught. It won't be enough until you're gone. Until Vanessa's safe. Until Kate can sleep without wondering if you're watching our house. We've never... You were there, Turner screamed it. Midnight, outside my family's home, threatening me, recording me. You made me feel hunted in my own town. You made me... He stopped, breathing hard. You made me do things I didn't want to do. The words hung wrong in the air. Gage caught it first. What did you do, Brian? Turner's expression shifted, from manic to something colder, more calculated. What I had to do. What any father would do to protect his daughter from predators. Alfie felt ice crawl up his spine. Where's Vanessa? Safe. Finally safe. Away from you. Away from Kate's negligence, somewhere you can't find her. The room temperature dropped 20 degrees. What did you do? Reaper's voice was barely controlled rage. I took her. Turner smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Alfie had ever seen on a human face. Today after school, Kate was at work. Vanessa was with the aftercare program. I picked her up, told them her mother had an emergency, signed her out. Easy. They didn't even question it because I'm her father. Alfie's phone was out before Turner finished talking. Calling Kate. It rang 6 times, went to voicemail. He tried again, same result. She doesn't know yet. Turner's voice was almost gentle. Won't know until she goes to pick Vanessa up and finds out she's already gone. By then, we'll be states away. Different names. Different life. Just me and my daughter like it should have been. You can't... Gage started forward. Turner raised the knife. I will cut my own throat right here on camera, and you'll be the ones who get blamed. You broke in. You attacked me. I defended myself. And while you're being arrested for my murder, nobody's looking for Vanessa. Nobody's finding her. We just disappear. Yemo chasse qua passad. Brian, Alfie's voice was the calmest thing in the room. You're not well. The pills, the stress, you're not thinking clearly. Vanessa needs her mother. She needs stability. Running will traumatize her worse than anything we could have done. She'll forgive me. Turner's certainty was absolute, chemically enhanced. Once we're away from here, once she realizes I saved her, she'll understand children always forgive their fathers. He believed it. That was the nightmare. He actually believed kidnapping his daughter again, running with her, hiding her from everyone who loved her. He believed that was salvation. Alfie's phone buzzed. Text from Kate. Aftercare says Brian picked up Vanessa at 3:45. Emergency contact authorized. Where is she? She knows now. Alfie showed Turner the screen. It's over. Where's Vanessa? Somewhere safe. Where? Oh, somewhere you'll never find before I'm gone. Turner was backing toward the bathroom. And you can't stop me because the moment you move, I make this look like exactly what I said it was. 3 bikers breaking into a recovering father's motel room, threatening him, forcing him to defend himself. Reaper's hand twitched. Alfie saw it. Turner saw it. The knife moved closer to Turner's own throat. Don't test me. Turner's voice was steady despite the chemical tremor in his hands. I've lost everything already. Marriage, daughter, dignity. My life doesn't mean anything without Vanessa. But my death? My death destroys you. Makes you killers. Ruins any chance you have of helping anyone ever again. Shit. He had them. Completely. Any move they made triggered catastrophe. Grab him, and he cut himself on camera. Made it look like assault. Leave. And Vanessa stayed missing. Call the cops. And Turner had time to do anything. Hurt himself, hurt Vanessa, disappear so deep they'd never surface. Alfie's brain raced through scenarios. None of them worked. None of them ended with everyone alive and Vanessa safe. Then his phone rang. Alice Mercer. He almost didn't answer, but something, instinct, desperation, the recognition that nothing else was working, made him hit accept. Alfie? Alice's voice was tight, controlled. I know where Vanessa is. Turner's expression changed, from triumph to confusion to something that looked like fear. How? Alfie started. I followed him. Alice's words came fast. This afternoon, I cut school. I've been watching his halfway house like you guys did because I knew something was wrong. I saw him pick up Vanessa. Saw him take her to the old Morrison building. 3rd floor, same office where you found her before. Amit that Naskoks Morrison. The abandoned factory. The same place everything started. Alice. I'm here now. Outside. I can see his car in the lot. Vanessa's in there alone. He left her and came back here to do whatever he's doing to you. Her voice cracked. She's crying. I can hear her through the broken windows. She's scared and alone, and he left her in that fucking building in the dark. Turner lunged for Alfie's phone. Alfie moved faster, years of combat experience against a man shaking from pills and panic. Turner's knife came up, but Alfie was already inside his guard, grabbing his wrist, twisting. The knife clattered to the floor. Reaper moved in, locked Turner's other arm. Gage kicked the knife toward the bathroom, out of reach. Turner fought like a drowning man, all flailing desperation and no technique. No, you can't. She'll ruin everything. Get off me! Alfie held the phone to his ear with his free hand while helping Reaper control Turner. Alice, listen to me very carefully. Do not go inside that building. Do not approach. Do you understand? But Vanessa, we're coming. Right now. We're 5 minutes away. You stay outside. You stay safe. And you call 911. Tell them there's a child alone in the Morrison building, 3rd floor. Tell them it's Vanessa Turner and she's been taken by her father. Can you do that? Ichibo iopa muscaras. Silence. Then, yeah, I can do that. Good. We're on our way. He hung up, looked at Reaper. Hold him. What are you? Hold him. Keep him here. I'm calling McKinley. Alfie dialed. Explained in 30 seconds. Vanessa at Morrison. Turner in custody at Starlight Motel. Alice Mercer on scene. Need units immediately, both locations. McKinley swore. Said he was rolling everything he had. Said don't do anything stupid. Alfie hung up without promising. Turner had stopped fighting. Just slumped in Reaper's grip, shaking. You don't understand. I was saving her. From you. From Kate. From everyone who is poisoning her against me. I'm her father. I'm all she has. You're the thing she's afraid of. Alfie's voice was cold. You're the nightmare she can't wake up from. And tonight, you proved everyone right who said you were too dangerous for unsupervised contact. I love her. Love doesn't look like this. Gage appeared in the doorway. Cops incoming, 2 minutes maybe. We need to move. Alfie looked at Turner, at this broken man who'd hurt everyone trying to help him, who'd weaponized the system against people who'd saved his daughter, who'd now stolen that daughter again and left her terrified in an abandoned building. He wanted to hurt him, wanted to make him feel a fraction of the fear Vanessa felt, wanted to prove Turner right about them being dangerous, but that would make him exactly what Turner accused them of being. Let him go. Alfie's voice was tired. Let the cops take him. Reaper released Turner, stepped back. Turner collapsed onto the bed, crying now. Real tears or performance, impossible to tell. The three riders walked out of room 14 into rain that had intensified to a downpour. Sirens were approaching from the south. They mounted their bikes, fired them up, and rolled out of the Starlight parking lot headed east toward Morrison Manufacturing. Toward a 12-year-old girl who'd been left alone in the dark by her father. Toward whatever ending this nightmare was accelerating toward. Morrison Manufacturing loomed against the night sky like a gravestone, windows broken and black. The parking lot flooded with rain that reflected red and blue from approaching police lights. Alice's bicycle lay on its side near the entrance, water pooling around the wheels. No sign of Alice herself. Alfie killed his engine, boots hitting pavement already running. Reaper and Gage flanked him. Behind them, 3 sheriff's vehicles pulled into the lot, doors opening, deputies emerging with flashlights and weapons drawn. McKinley's voice cut through the rain. Alfie, stand down. Let my people... But Alfie was already through the loading dock entrance, flashlight cutting through familiar darkness. The same route they'd taken 3 weeks ago. The same building. The same nightmare on repeat. Except this time Alice Mercer met them in the first-floor corridor, soaked and shaking and furious. 3rd floor. She pointed toward the stairwell. She's still there. I could hear her crying, but I didn't know if I should go up alone or wait, or... You did perfect. Alfie gripped her shoulder. Where's a safe place for you to wait? I'm not waiting. I'm coming with you. Alice, she's my best friend. Alice's voice echoed off concrete. She's up there alone and scared, and I'm not hiding while you go get her. I'm coming. No time to argue. Deputies were entering the building behind them, McKinley shouting orders about securing the perimeter and clearing floors. Alfie made a decision that was probably wrong, but felt necessary. Stay behind me. Don't touch anything. If things get dangerous, you run. Understood? Alice nodded. They climbed. 2nd floor, empty. 3rd floor, the hallway stretching toward that same corner office where everything had gone wrong before. Light spilled from under the door, battery lantern, same as last time. But this time there was sound too. Crying. A child's voice, hoarse from hours of it. Alfie reached the door first. It was closed, but not locked. He pushed it open slowly. Vanessa Turner sat in the same spot against the wall where she'd been 3 weeks ago. Same position, same terror. Like time had looped back on itself and none of the interim had mattered. She looked up when the door opened, face streaked with tears, eyes swollen. When she saw Alfie, something in her expression broke. You came. Her voice was barely a whisper. I knew someone would come, but I didn't know if it would be him again, or... Alice pushed past Alfie, dropped to her knees beside Vanessa, wrapped her arms around her. Both girls collapsed into each other, crying so hard they shook. Alfie turned away, gave them privacy, focused on the room. Same setup as before. Lantern, sleeping bag, backpack in the corner with what looked like clothes and food. Turner had planned this. Not a spur-of-moment grab, but premeditated. Supplies. Location. A place to keep her while he executed whatever play he'd staged at the motel. McKinley appeared in the doorway, took in the scene, exhaled slowly. Paramedics are 2 minutes out. Girl hurt? Scared, not hurt. Alfie kept his voice low. Turner left her here. Was going to come back after whatever he was planning with us. He confessed to that? Alice witnessed the abduction, followed him here, called me. McKinley's expression went complicated. A 12-year-old conducted surveillance on a kidnapping suspect, tracked him to a secondary location, And coordinated a rescue without adult supervision?
Yeah. That's... McKinley stopped. Started again. That's either the bravest thing I've heard or evidence of serious judgment issues in the adults around her. Probably both.
Paramedics arrived, equipment clanking, professional voices cutting through the emotion. They approached Vanessa carefully, started assessment. Pulse, pupils, obvious injuries. The girls didn't let go of each other. The paramedics worked around their grip. Alfie's phone buzzed. Kate. He answered. Where is she? Tell me, please tell me. Morrison Building, 3rd floor, safe. Paramedics are with her now. Not hurt. Scared, but not hurt. The sound Kate made was relief and rage and grief compressed into a single broken syllable. I'm coming. I'm 10 minutes away. Don't let her out of your sight until I get there. I won't. The line died. Alfie pocketed his phone, looked at Alice still holding Vanessa. 2 12-year-olds who'd survived trauma that would mark them for life. Who'd learned that the world was hostile and help was conditional, and the only people you could really trust were the ones who showed up when everyone else stayed away. It was the wrong lesson, but it was the one they'd been taught. McKinley moved beside Alfie, voice low. Turner's in custody, motel rooms being processed. His phone, the recording, we've got it. Watched it already. Shows him setting up the scene, hurting himself, staging evidence. Shows you guys arriving after. Shows exactly what he was trying to frame you for. Alfie felt something loosen in his chest. So the investigation into your club just shifted, from potential predators to witnesses in an attempted frame job. CPS will still want to interview Alice, make sure she's safe, but the optics just flipped completely. McKinley paused. You're not heroes, but you're not villains either. Turns out you're just people who got caught in the middle of one man's breakdown. That's what you're telling the press. That's what the evidence tells the press. I'm just the messenger. McKinley looked at Vanessa being loaded onto a stretcher, Alice refusing to let go. Kid okay to ride in the ambulance? Alice?
Yeah.
Ask her. McKinley did? Alice nodded frantically. The paramedics made space for her. 2 girls on one stretcher holding hands, headed down the stairs toward waiting ambulances and flashing lights, and a mother who would arrive any second now. Alfie, Reaper, and Gage stood in the empty office watching rain blow through broken windows. The battery lantern flickered, running low. In a few hours, this building would be empty again. Evidence collected, tape removed. Just another abandoned factory where bad things happened because the people who owned it stopped caring. We almost killed him tonight. Reaper's voice was quiet. If Alice hadn't called, if we'd gone through with it, we'd be the ones in custody right now, Hatog. I know. Alfie stared at the wall where Vanessa had been sitting. We crossed a line just planning it. Doesn't matter that we didn't follow through. We became what we promised we'd never be. We became what we needed to be. Gage lit a cigarette despite the no-smoking rules nobody enforced here. System failed. We stepped up. That's what we do. And almost destroyed ourselves doing it.
But
we didn't. Gage exhaled smoke toward the broken window. Turner destroyed himself. We survived his self-destruction. That's all. It was a generous interpretation, probably too generous. But standing in that office with rain coming in and sirens wailing outside and 2 girls safe because of choices they'd made, Alfie didn't have the energy to argue philosophy. They descended the stairs, walked out into rain that was finally starting to let up. Kate's car skidded into the parking lot, door flying open before it fully stopped. She ran toward the ambulance where Vanessa was visible through the open rear doors. Mother and daughter collided in an embrace that looked like it might never end. Alice climbed out of the ambulance, giving them space, stood in the rain watching her best friend held by her mother, safe and whole. And finally protected by something stronger than just hope and timing. Alfie approached Alice slowly. Your mom's gonna be pissed. Yeah. Alice didn't look away from Vanessa. Worth it, though. Cutting school, following a kidnapping suspect, conducting unauthorized surveillance, breaking about 6 different laws. You guys break laws all the time. We're adults. So? Alice finally looked at him. Doesn't mean you have better judgment, means you just have better lawyers. Fair point. McKinley walked over, handed Alice a blanket someone had produced. We need to talk.
You, me, your mother, when she arrives. About what you did today. Am I in trouble? Honestly, I don't know yet. You saved a life. You also put yourself in serious danger. You demonstrated incredible bravery and terrible judgment in equal measure. McKinley's expression softened slightly. But mostly you did what the system couldn't, so we'll figure it out. Alice wrapped the blanket around herself, still watching Vanessa.
Is he going to prison? Brian? Yes, for a long time. Kidnapping, parental abduction, filing false reports, staging a crime scene. He's done. Good. Boris, what?
The word hung in the rain-soaked air. Not vindictive, just factual.
A 12-year-old's assessment of justice delivered. Kate emerged from the ambulance, saw Alfie, walked over. Her face was complicated, gratitude and anger and exhaustion all mixed together. Thank you. The words sounded like they cost her something. For finding her again, for... She stopped. I don't know what to say. You saved her twice now, and I've spent weeks being told you're dangerous. We are dangerous. Alfie's voice was honest. That's what makes us useful when things go bad. But it's also what makes us terrible role models and worse influences on children. Kate, you should keep Vanessa away from us. From the garage. From this whole world. Kate looked at him for a long moment, then at Alice, standing alone wrapped in a police blanket, then back at Alfie. Alice doesn't seem to think you're that dangerous. Alice is 12 and processing trauma in unhealthy ways. Maybe. Or maybe she recognizes what adults keep forgetting. Kate's voice was quiet. That sometimes the people who look dangerous are the only ones willing to fight for you when everyone else is following procedure. She walked back to the ambulance. Paramedics closed the doors. Lights started flashing. The ambulance pulled out, headed toward the hospital for observation and documentation, and all the official responses that came after crisis. Alfie, Reaper, and Gage stood in the Morrison parking lot as deputies packed up equipment, as evidence techs photographed the building, as the machinery of law enforcement did what it did after people like them had already done the ugly work of finding the missing. What now? Gage asked. Now we go home. Alfie started toward his bike. We wait for CPS to finish their investigation. We cooperate with everything they need. We prove we're not what Turner said we were. And if we can't prove it, then the club ends. We all go our separate ways. We become the cautionary tale people tell about what happens when you try to help without proper training or oversight or any of the things that make intervention legal. They mounted their bikes. Engines caught, rumbled, echoed off the Morrison building. Behind them, Alice Mercer watched 3 Harleys roll out of the parking lot into a night that had stopped raining but still felt cold. She didn't wave, didn't move, just stood there holding a police blanket around her shoulders while her mother's car pulled up and started the conversation Alice had been dreading about judgment and choices and consequences. But for one moment before that conversation started, Alice smiled. Because Vanessa was safe. Because the monster was going to prison. Because she'd done something when the adults around her were paralyzed by rules and fear. Because sometimes 12-year-olds had to be braver than the grown-ups, even when it cost them everything. Tussets. The fallout took 3 weeks to settle. CPS closed their investigation after interviewing Alice, Vanessa, and both mothers. Findings. No evidence of predatory behavior. Recommendation. Establish formal protocols if minors will be present at club facilities. Warning issued. Files sealed. The newspaper ran a follow-up story. Local MC assists in recovery of abducted child. A smaller than the first article, buried on page 6. But at least it wasn't a hit piece. Brian Turner pleaded guilty to kidnapping, custodial interference, and filing false police reports. 15 years minimum. No chance of parole before 10. Permanent loss of parental rights. Restraining order made permanent and extended to include any contact attempts from prison. Kate Turner sold her house, moved 2 towns over. Fresh start. New schools for Vanessa. Distance from everything that had happened. And the Hell's Riders garage. The garage became something it had never been before. Not quite a youth center, not quite a community resource, but a place where the rules were understood even if they weren't written. You could show up if you needed somewhere to be. You could ask for help if you had nowhere else to ask. You could trust that the people here, dangerous as they were, wouldn't betray that trust. Formal protocols got established. Liability insurance purchased. Background checks completed. Everything above board and documented. But the essence stayed the same. Broken people fixing broken things. Outcasts protecting other outcasts. A brotherhood that existed in the margins where official help didn't reach. Alice Mercer stopped coming after 2 weeks. Her mother found out about the lies, the surveillance, the danger she'd put herself in. Grounded her for a month. Transferred her to a different school. Made sure she understood that what she'd done was reckless. But on a Friday night 4 weeks after Morrison, a woman knocked on the garage bay door. Alfie looked up from the transmission he was rebuilding. Didn't recognize her at first, then did. Alice's mother, Jennifer Mercer, holding a casserole dish wrapped in foil. Mrs. Mercer. Alfie wiped his hands, approached carefully. Alice okay? She's fine, grounded, angry, but fine. Jennifer held out the casserole. I brought this to say thank you for keeping her safe, for finding Vanessa, for... She stopped. I'm not good at this. I work in accounting. Numbers make sense. People don't. But my daughter thinks you saved her best friend's life. And maybe you did. So, thank you. Alfie took the casserole. It was still warm. We did what anyone would have done. No, most people would have called the police and waited. You didn't wait. That's the difference. Jennifer met his eyes. Alice wants to come back to do homework here, to be around you guys. I've told her no. I've explained all the reasons it's inappropriate, but she keeps asking. So I need to understand, what is it about this place that makes a 12-year-old feel safer here than anywhere else? Alfie looked around the garage. Oil stains, tool chests, motorcycles, men in leather working in comfortable silence. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe because we don't pretend to be something we're not. We're not teachers or counselors or any of the people who are supposed to help. We're just here. And when someone shows up needing something, we don't ask if we're qualified to give it. We just try. Jennifer considered that. That's either wisdom or terrible liability waiting to happen. Probably both. She almost smiled. Alice can come back 1 hour after school, twice a week. I'll pick her up personally, and if I get even a hint that something inappropriate is happening, you'll burn this place to the ground, and we'll deserve it. Alfie's voice was firm. Mrs. Mercer, we're not perfect. We've made mistakes, but we're not predators. We're just mechanics who occasionally help people who fall through the cracks. I know. If I thought otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You're all right. Yeah, it's on this. Jennifer turned to leave, stopped. One more thing. Alice wants to learn to change oil. Says if she's going to hang around a garage, she should know how things work. Would someone be willing to teach her? Yeah. Alfie felt something warm in his chest. We can do that. Miss Jennifer left. The garage returned to its normal rhythms. Work continued. Engines rebuilt. Problems solved through methodical application of tools and experience. 2 days later, Alice showed up at 4:30 with her backpack and a notebook and a determination to understand exactly how motorcycles worked. Not because she wanted to ride one, because she wanted to understand the thing that had saved her best friend. Gage taught her oil changes. Wicker showed her spark plug replacement. Reaper, to everyone's surprise, explained electrical systems with a patience nobody knew he possessed. And Alfie watched this 12-year-old girl who'd survived trauma absorb mechanical knowledge like it was healing. Watched her find purpose in understanding how broken things got fixed. Watched her become part of something that looked wrong from the outside but felt exactly right from within. 6 weeks after Morrison, McKinley stopped by the garage. Not official business, just a visit. He handed Alfie a file folder. Turner's psych evaluation. Thought you might want to read it. Alfie opened the folder. Medical terms, diagnoses, breakdown of the chemical imbalances and untreated disorders that had turned a decent man into a monster. Narcissistic personality disorder, substance abuse, delusional thinking patterns exacerbated by stress. He was sick. McKinley's voice was neutral. Not evil, not a predator, just sick. And the system failed to catch it until he'd already hurt everyone. That's supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to make you understand that sometimes there are no villains, just broken people breaking other people until someone stops them. McKinley pulled out his flask, offered it. Alfie took it this time, sipped whiskey that burned clean. You guys did good, even when you almost did bad. The line between the two is thinner than anyone wants to admit. We crossed it. Alfie handed back the flask. We planned to hurt him. Well, but you didn't. That's what matters. You walked up to the line, looked over the edge, and stepped back. McKinley pocketed the flask. Most people never get that close, never have to choose between justice and revenge. You chose right, even if it was a close call. Whoa! McKinley left. Alfie stood in the garage holding a file on Brian Turner's broken mind, wondering if any of this had mattered. If saving Vanessa twice was enough to justify the pain of getting there. If the cost of intervention was worth the result. His phone buzzed. Text from Kate. Vanessa drew this in therapy. Asked me to send it to you. An attached image. Child's drawing. A building. A motorcycle. Stick figures. 3 men in black. One small figure between them. Words in crayon across the top. Thank you for finding me. Alfie stared at that drawing for a long time. Then he saved it to his phone, closed the file on Turner's psychology, and went back to rebuilding the transmission in front of him. Because some questions didn't have answers. Some lines couldn't be uncrossed. Some choices lived with you forever, whether they were right or wrong. But sometimes, in the margins where official help didn't reach, where systems failed and procedures couldn't save you, sometimes dangerous men made the difference between a child dying and a child surviving. And that had to be enough. Even when it cost everything. Even when the scars never healed. Even when the question of heroism versus recklessness remained forever unanswered. 4 months after Morrison. July heat settling over the town like a weight. The kind that made asphalt shimmer and turned the Hells Riders' garage into an oven, despite the bay doors standing open to catch any breeze that might exist. Alfie was replacing brake pads on a street glide when the call came through. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him wipe his hands and hit accept. Mr. Raines. A woman's voice. Professional. Careful. This is Dr. Sarah Chen from Riverside Family Therapy. I'm calling because Vanessa Turner asked me to reach out to you. Alfie felt his chest tighten. She okay? She's working through a lot. Her mother's given permission for this contact. Vanessa wants to see you. And the other men who were there that night. She says she needs to say something she can't say any other way. What kind of something? The kind that might help her heal. Or might make things harder. I honestly don't know. Dr. Chen paused. But she's been in therapy for 16 weeks now, and this is the first thing she's asked for that isn't about avoiding triggers or managing fear. It's about moving forward. So I'm inclined to support it. Alfie looked around the garage. Reaper was working on a primary drive. Gage was inventorying parts. Wicker was on his back under a Road King, swearing at a stubborn oil filter. These men who'd become brothers through choices neither heroic nor villainous, just necessary. When? Alfie asked. Saturday, 2 p.m. My office. Just you and whoever else was there that night at Morrison. Kate will be present. Vanessa will have the option to leave at any point. This is on her terms. We'll be there. Alfie hung up, stared at his phone like it might explain what came next. Reaper looked up from the primary drive, grease-stained and tired. Problem? Vanessa wants to see us. Therapy office. Saturday. The garage went quiet. Even the radio seemed to lower its volume. Why? Gage's voice was careful. Therapist says she needs to say something. Needs closure or confrontation or, I don't know, some part of processing we can't help with. What if it makes things worse? Wicker rolled out from under the Road King. What if seeing us triggers her? What if we're part of the trauma, not the solution? Then we're part of the trauma. Alfie's voice was firm. Doesn't mean we don't show up. Means we show up and let her say what she needs to say, even if it destroys us. Nobody argued, because that was the debt they owed, not just to Vanessa, but to every choice that had led them to that frozen office building twice, to every line they'd walked up to and sometimes crossed, to every moment they'd chosen action over procedure and survival over safety. Saturday came too fast and too slow at the same time. Dun. Dr. Chen's office was in a converted house on Maple Street, the kind of place that tried very hard to not look clinical. Comfortable chairs instead of waiting room plastic, art on the walls, plants that were actually alive, a coffee maker that brewed something that didn't taste like punishment. Alfie, Reaper, Gage, and Wicker arrived 10 minutes early, sat in the waiting area not talking, just existing in that particular tension that came from not knowing if you were about to be forgiven or condemned. At 2:03, Dr. Chen emerged from her office, mid-40s, kind eyes, the demeanor of someone who'd heard every variation of human suffering and learned to hold it without breaking. "Thank you for coming." She shook each of their hands. "Before we start, I need you to understand the ground rules. Vanessa is in control. She speaks. You listen. You can respond if she asks questions, but you don't defend, don't justify, don't try to fix. You just hear her. Can you do that?" 4 nods. "Kate will be in the room, but won't intervene unless Vanessa asks. I'll be present as facilitator. If at any point this becomes too much for Vanessa, we stop. No arguments. Clear?" Jam. "Clear." Alfie's voice was steady, despite his heart trying to break through his ribs. Dr. Chen opened the office door. Inside, Vanessa sat on a couch that was too big for her, making her look even smaller than 12. Kate sat beside her, not touching but present, close enough to reach if needed. Vanessa looked different from the terrified child they'd found twice in that Morrison office. Her hair was shorter. She wore glasses now, probably always needed them, but the trauma had revealed it. She held a notebook in her lap, pages covered in handwriting Alfie couldn't read from this distance. The 4 writers took seats across from Vanessa. Dr. Chen positioned herself slightly to the side, observing but not interfering. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The air conditioning hummed. Outside, summer traffic moved past on Maple Street, people going about lives that didn't include trauma and therapy and reckoning. Vanessa looked up. Her eyes found Alfie first, then moved to each of the others, cataloging, remembering, processing. "I wrote down what I wanted to say." Her voice was quiet but steady. "Because if I don't read it, I'll forget or get scared or I'll just cry and not say anything. Take your time." Dr. Chen's voice was gentle. Vanessa opened the notebook. Her hands shook slightly, but she held the pages steady enough to read. "I was really mad at you for a while, at all of you, because after you found me the first time, I thought things would get better. I thought my dad would go away and my mom would feel safe and I could just be normal again. But it got worse. He came back. He took me again. And for a while I thought," her voice cracked, but she pushed through, "I thought maybe you made it worse by helping. Maybe if you'd just let the police handle it, he wouldn't have been so angry. He wouldn't have done what he did." The words hit like bullets. Alfie felt each one. Beside him, Reaper's jaw was so tight it looked like it might shatter. Vanessa continued reading. "My therapist said that's not how it works. That my dad was sick and would have done bad things no matter what anyone else did. But I didn't believe her for a long time. I wanted someone to blame who wasn't my dad because blaming him meant—" She stopped, breathed, started again. "Meant accepting that the person who was supposed to protect me was the person I needed protection from." Kate's hand moved toward Vanessa but stopped before making contact, letting her daughter have this moment uninterrupted. "I'm not mad anymore." Vanessa looked up from the notebook, met Alfie's eyes directly. "I'm scared. I'm scared all the time. I'm scared of cars that look like my dad's car. I'm scared of men who are his height or have his voice. I'm scared of being alone in rooms with doors that lock. I'm scared of things I can't even explain because they don't make sense, but they're there anyway." "That's normal." Dr. Chen's voice was soft. "That's trauma. It's not logical. It just is. I know." Vanessa looked back at her notebook. "But the thing I figured out, the thing I needed to tell you, is that I'm not scared of you. I should be. You're big and loud and you ride motorcycles and you look like the kind of people my teachers told me to stay away from. But when I see you in my nightmares, when I remember that night at Morrison, you're not the scary part. You're the part where things start getting better." Alfie felt something crack in his chest. Not breaking, opening. "Alice told me what you did. How you planned to hurt my dad to make him stop. How you almost crossed a line you couldn't uncross. She said you were willing to become bad people to keep me safe. Vanessa's voice was stronger now. I don't know if that makes you heroes or just dangerous people who made a choice. But I know you showed up. Twice. When nobody else could find me, you found me. She closed the notebook, looked at each of them in turn.
I wanted to tell you thank you, and I'm sorry, because I think saving me cost you things. Alice told me about the investigation and the newspaper and how people stopped trusting you, and that's not fair. You helped and got punished for it. So, I'm sorry, and thank you. And I needed you to know that even though I'm scared of a lot of things, I'm not scared of you.
The silence that followed was heavy with things nobody knew how to say. Finally, Alfie spoke. Vanessa, you don't owe us thanks, and you definitely don't owe us apologies. We did what anyone should have done. The fact that it cost us something, that's on us.
That's not your weight to carry.
But it is. Vanessa's eyes were bright, but no tears fell. Because I'm the reason. I'm why my dad got so crazy. I'm why Alice almost got hurt following him. I'm why everyone's lives got complicated.
Cease.
No. Kate's voice was firm. This was the first time she'd spoken. Your father is why. His choices, his sickness, his refusal to get help when he needed it. You're a child. You're not responsible for adult decisions. Then why does it feel like I am? Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. Because trauma makes us feel responsible for things we couldn't control. It's one of the ways our brains try to make sense of chaos. If we're responsible, then we have power. If we have power, we can prevent it from happening again. But that's a lie trauma tells us. Vanessa looked at the notebook in her lap. How long until the lies stop?
I don't know. Dr. Chen's honesty was brutal and kind at the same time. Different for everyone. But they get quieter, easier to recognize. Eventually you learn which voices to trust. Vanessa nodded like she understood, even though she probably didn't. Not yet. Maybe not for years. Reaper cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice was rougher than usual. I got a daughter about your age. Haven't seen her in 3 years because her mom moved out of state, and I didn't fight it. Figured she was better off without me around. But watching what you survived, made me realize I was wrong. She doesn't need a perfect father. She just needs a father who shows up. Did you call her? Vanessa's question was direct, childlike. Yeah, last week. First time in 6 months. She answered. We talked for an hour. Reaper's jaw worked. Because of you. Because if a kid who went through what you went through can be brave enough to ask for what she needs, I can be brave enough to show up for mine. Gage spoke next. I told my brother I loved him. First time since high school. He's got cancer, stage 3. I found out 6 months ago and didn't know what to say, so I just didn't say anything. Then you asked to see us, and I thought, if this 12-year-old can face the people who remind her of the worst night of her life just to say thank you, I can face my brother and say goodbye while there's still time. Wicker was quieter, but his voice carried weight. I stopped drinking, 37 days sober, because watching your dad destroy himself with pills and booze and desperation, watching what addiction did to your family, I saw my future, and I didn't want it. The confessions hung in the air like offerings, not about fixing Vanessa or making her feel better, just honest acknowledgement that trauma radiated outward, touching everyone it reached, changing them in ways that couldn't be predicted. Vanessa looked at these 4 men who'd saved her and been broken by it and somehow found pieces of themselves in the wreckage. Are you guys okay? She asked it like she genuinely wanted to know. Getting there. Alfie's voice was honest. Some days better than others, same as you probably. Do you still have nightmares? Yeah. About me? About Morrison? Sometimes. More often about the things we almost did. The choices we almost made. Yeah. Vanessa considered that. Alice says the difference between heroes and villains is just timing. That you guys could have been either one depending on when things happened. Alice is too smart for 12. I know. A small smile. The first Alfie had seen on her face since before Christmas. She's coming back to the garage. Her mom said it was okay, as long as someone teaches her actual skills and not just... Vanessa searched for words. Not just lets her hang around. We're teaching her motorcycle maintenance. Alfie felt himself almost smile back. She can change oil,
replace spark plugs, diagnose electrical problems. Kid's got good hands, patient, doesn't rush. She wants to ride one someday. A motorcycle. Says when she's 16, she's getting her license and buying a Harley and never being scared again. That how it works? Motorcycles cure fear?
I don't know.
Vanessa's expression went serious again. Does it? For you guys?
Isha.
Alfie thought about that. About decades of riding, of engine noise, drowning out thoughts, of highway miles putting distance between himself and things he couldn't fix. No, he said honestly. Fear doesn't go away. You just learn to ride with it, learn to control it instead of letting it control you. Vanessa nodded slowly, filing that information away in whatever mental framework she was building to survive what had been done to her. Dr. Chen glanced at the clock. We're at 40 minutes. Vanessa, how are you feeling? Do you need to stop, or is there more you wanted to say? Vanessa looked at her notebook, one more page. She turned to it, read silently for a moment, then looked up at the writers. I wrote this last part for Alice, but she said I should tell you too. She said you'd understand. Vanessa took a breath. I used to think safety meant nothing bad could happen. That if I was safe, I'd never be scared again. But that's not real. Bad things happen everywhere. People who are supposed to love you hurt you. Systems that are supposed to protect you fail. Kate made a sound that might have been agreement or grief or both. So I asked Dr. Chen what safety actually means. And she said safety isn't about stopping bad things. It's about knowing someone will show up when bad things happen. It's about trust that you're not alone. Vanessa looked directly at Alfie. You showed up, twice. When I was alone and scared and convinced nobody would find me, you showed up. We'll always show up. The words came out of Alfie before he'd decided to say them. For you, for Alice, for anyone who needs help we can provide. That's what we do. Even when it costs us, even when it's complicated, we show up. Vanessa closed her notebook. Okay. Just that. Okay. Like she'd received the answer she needed and could move forward now. Dr. Chen stood. I think this is a good place to stop. Vanessa, you did incredibly well. I'm proud of you. Vanessa looked at her mother. Kate wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders, careful, gentle, giving her room to pull away if she needed. Vanessa leaned in instead. Two people learning to trust touch again. The writers stood, moved toward the door. Before they could leave, Vanessa spoke one more time. Will you still be there, at the garage? If I ever want to visit? Not now. Maybe not for a long time, but someday? Boss. Alfie turned back. Every day. 4:30 p.m., doors open. You're always welcome. Even though I'm the reason everything went bad, you're not the reason. You're the reminder that some things are worth fighting for even when the fight gets ugly. Alfie's voice was firm. Don't carry blame that isn't yours, Vanessa. You got enough real weight without adding imaginary guilt. She nodded. Kate guided her out through a side door, avoiding the waiting room, protecting her daughter from the exposure of being seen leaving therapy. The four writers stood in Dr. Chen's office, not quite ready to leave. That helped her. Dr. Chen's voice was professional again. More than you probably realize, trauma survivors need to reclaim narrative, need to transform from victim to participant in their own story. Facing you, thanking you. That was her taking control of what happened to her. What about us? Gage asked. Did it help us? Doctor. Chen smiled slightly. Did it? None of them answered, because the answer was complicated. Yes and no. Relief and new weight. Absolution and responsibility. Trauma doesn't end when danger ends, Dr. Chen said quietly. It echoes. Changes shape. But moments like this, where everyone involved acknowledges the truth and releases what they can, those moments are the beginning of healing, not the end. The beginning. They left. Walked out into July heat that felt less oppressive than the air-conditioned office. Mounted their bikes, sat there for a moment before starting engines. I need a drink. Reaper's voice was rough. It's 2:30 in the afternoon, Wicker pointed out. I need a drink, Reaper repeated. They ended up at Mabel's diner instead. Coffee and pie, and the kind of silence that came from processing things too big for words. Outside the window, the town moved through its Saturday rhythms. People who didn't know that four men were sitting in a booth trying to figure out if they were heroes or just lucky idiots who'd stumbled into doing the right thing. "You really gonna stay sober?" Gage asked Wicker. "Trying." Wicker stared at his coffee. 37 days. Every morning I wake up and think today's the day I break. But I keep not breaking. So, I guess I'm trying. Proud of you, brother. Don't be. I'm not doing it for noble reasons. I'm doing it because I saw what Turner became, and I'm terrified of becoming that. Fear's a valid motivator. Alfie dumped sugar into his coffee. Doesn't matter why you stay sober as long as you stay sober. The bell over the diner door chimed. Alice Mercer walked in with her mother, both carrying shopping bags from the bookstore down the street. Alice spotted the riders, said something to her mother, headed over. "Hey!" She stood beside the booth, backpack slung over one shoulder. "You guys just came from Dr. Chen's office. How'd you—" Gage started. "I texted Vanessa. She told me." Alice looked at each of them. "Did she say what she needed to say?" "Yeah." Alfie gestured to the empty booth across the aisle. "You want to sit?" Alice glanced back at her mother. Jennifer Mercer was watching from the counter, expression unreadable. She gave a small nod. Permission granted. Alice slid into the booth across from them, ordered hot chocolate from the waitress who appeared like magic. When it arrived, she wrapped both hands around the mug, absorbing warmth even though it was 90 degrees outside. "Vanessa's doing better," Alice said. "Not great, but better. She doesn't cry as much. She's sleeping in her own room now. Little things." "How about you?" Alfie asked. "How are you doing, Nan?" Alice shrugged. "I'm mad a lot. At my dad for leaving when I was 6. At my mom for working all the time. At teachers who don't listen. At the system that let Turner hurt people and then punished you guys for stopping him." She took a sip of hot chocolate. "Dr. Chen, I see her too now. Different days than Vanessa. She says anger is normal. That it's better than being numb." "She's right." Reaper's voice was quiet. "But I don't want to be angry forever. I want to—" Alice stopped, searching for words. "I want to be the kind of person who fixes things instead of just being mad about them being broken." "That why you're learning mechanics?" Gage asked. "Partly. Also because understanding how things work makes them less scary. Motorcycles used to seem dangerous and chaotic. Now I know they're just machines following rules. You understand the rules, you can predict what they'll do. Wish people worked that way." Wicker's voice was tired. "They kind of do." Alice looked at him. "Everyone's got patterns. You just have to pay attention long enough to see them. Turner's pattern was that he escalated when he felt powerless. You guys' pattern is you show up when people are in trouble, even when you shouldn't." The observation was so direct, so accurate, that nobody knew how to respond. Alice finished her hot chocolate, slid out of the booth. "I'm coming to the garage Monday after school. Gage said he'd teach me how to adjust chain tension." 4:30, Gage confirmed. "Don't be late." "I won't." Alice started to walk away, stopped, turned back. "Vanessa asked me something yesterday. Asked if I thought you guys were good people. I told her I don't think that's the right question." "What's the right question?" Alfie asked. "Whether you're the kind of people who show up. Good and bad, that's complicated. Everyone's both depending on the day. But showing up? That's simple. Either you do or you don't." Alice adjusted her backpack. "You always do. That's enough." She rejoined her mother at the counter. They paid, left, disappeared into the summer afternoon. The four riders sat in silence for a long moment. Then Reaper laughed. It started quiet, built into something genuine. "We just got life coached by a 12-year-old. She's not wrong, though." Gage signaled the waitress for more coffee. "Showing up is enough. Rest of it, hero, villain, good guy, bad guy. That's just narrative people impose after the fact. Philosophy major over here." Wicker's tone was light, but his expression was serious. "But yeah, maybe she's right. Maybe all we can control is whether we show up or we don't." Alfie looked out the window at Maple Street, at the town that had judged them, and needed them, and feared them, and depended on them in roughly equal measure. At the world that was exactly as broken as it had always been, but somehow felt slightly more manageable than it had 4 months ago. His phone buzzed. Text from McKinley. Turner's appeal was denied. 15 years firm. Thought you'd want to know. Alfie showed the others. Reaper nodded. Gage exhaled slowly. Wicker looked relieved. It's done then. Alfie pocketed his phone. Really done. Turner's gone. Vanessa's safe. Investigation's closed. We survived. With casualties. Reaper gestured to Wicker. Your sobriety. My custody battle. Gage's brother. Alfie's faith that helping people doesn't cost everything. But we survived. Alfie's voice was firm. That counts for something. They finished their coffee. Paid. Left generous tips because Mabel's had been witness to countless writer conversations over the decades and never judged, never reported, just served pie and coffee and let broken men exist without commentary. Outside, their bikes waited in the sun, chrome reflecting light, leather seats hot enough to burn through denim, engines that would roar to life with a single kick, would carry them wherever they needed to go, would drown out thoughts with mechanical thunder. But they didn't mount up immediately. Just stood there in the parking lot, 4 men who'd become brothers through trauma and choice and the particular alchemy that came from being the people who showed up. You think we'll do this again? Gage asked. Get involved in something we shouldn't? Probably. Alfie pulled on his gloves. Someone will show up at the garage needing help. We'll tell ourselves it's not our problem. Then we'll help anyway because that's who we are. And it'll probably cost us again. Yeah. You good with that? Alfie thought about Vanessa's drawing on his phone, about Alice learning to fix motorcycles, about Reaper calling his daughter, about Gage visiting his dying brother, about Wicker's 37 days sober, about Kate and Vanessa rebuilding their lives 2 towns over, about the cost of helping measured against the cost of walking away. Yeah, he said finally, I'm good with that. They mounted up. Engines fired in sequence. Alfie, Reaper, Gage, Wicker. 4 Harleys rumbling in harmony, sound washing over the parking lot, the street, the town that knew them by reputation and leather, and the fact that they showed up when nobody else would. They rolled out together, no particular destination, just the road and each other and the understanding that some debts couldn't be repaid, some lines couldn't be uncrossed, and some choices defined you whether you wanted them to or not. The garage would open Monday at 4:30. Alice would show up with questions about chain tension. Other people would come with broken bikes and broken lives and the hope that mechanics who fixed machines might somehow fix other things too. The Hell's Riders would be there. Not because they were heroes. Not because they were good men. Just because showing up was what they did. Even when it cost everything. Even when the world punished them for it. Even when the only reward was knowing that somewhere 2 12-year-old girls slept a little easier because dangerous men had chosen to be safe when it mattered most. 6 months later. December again. Winter returning like a reminder that time was circular, that seasons repeated, that the world kept turning regardless of human drama. The garage Christmas party was a tradition that nobody remembered starting, but everyone understood. Not religious, just an excuse to close early, drink beer, eat food people brought from home, and exist together outside the context of work. Alice showed up with her mother. Jennifer Mercer had become a semi-regular presence at the garage, still cautious but no longer afraid. She brought cookies. Alice brought a project bike she was rebuilding, a vintage Honda someone had donated when they'd heard a kid was learning mechanics. Vanessa didn't come, wasn't ready, might never be ready. But Kate sent a card signed by both of them, and inside was a photo of Vanessa smiling at her new school, looking almost normal, almost healed. Reaper's daughter flew in from Oregon, 8 years old, gap-toothed, shy around her father's friends, but brave enough to ask Gage to lift her up so she could see inside an engine. Gage did, explained what each part did in language an 8-year-old could understand. Wicker was 4 months sober, wore the chip on a chain around his neck like a talisman. Still attended meetings 3 times a week. Still woke up every morning thinking today might be the day he broke. But hadn't broken yet. The garage was decorated with lights someone had found in storage, half of them not working, the other half flickering like they were debating whether to quit. Someone had brought a radio playing Christmas music from the 70s. Someone else had made chili that was probably too spicy, but nobody complained. Alfie stood near the bay door watching people eat and laugh and exist in this space they'd built together. Watching Alice show Reaper's daughter how to properly torque a bolt. Watching Jennifer Mercer talk to Gage about her accounting work. finding common ground in the precision both their jobs required. Watching Wicker decline a beer without anyone making it a thing, McKinley showed up unannounced, still in uniform, carrying a case of soda for the kids and whiskey for everyone else. He handed Alfie a bottle, leaned against the workbench. Heard Turner tried to send Christmas cards from prison to Vanessa and Kate. They get delivered? No. Intercepted per the restraining order. But he tried. McKinley pulled out his flask, added whiskey to his coffee. Man still doesn't understand that love isn't about what you want. It's about what the other person needs. He's sick, can't understand what he can't understand. True enough. McKinley watched the party. You guys did good. With Alice, with Vanessa. With the whole mess. Could have gone a lot worse. Could have gone better. Could have gone better is true for everything. McKinley's phone buzzed. He checked it, sighed. Duty calls, domestic over on Fletcher. Never ends. You want backup? McKinley almost smiled. No, but I appreciate the offer. You guys have done enough vigilante shit for 1 year. He left. The party continued. Alice convinced Reaper's daughter to try sitting on a motorcycle. The kid's face lit up. Reaper took a photo, sent it to his ex-wife with a message Alfie couldn't see, but assumed was something about their daughter needing this, needing him, needing connections that went beyond courtroom agreements. Around 8 p.m. people started leaving. Jennifer collected Alice, promised she'd be back Monday after school. Reaper's daughter fell asleep on the office couch, wrapped in a leather jacket that drowned her. Reaper carried her to his truck, drove carefully toward the motel where they were staying for the weekend. By 9 p.m., it was just Alfie, Gage, and Wicker sitting in the quiet garage, radio still playing low, Christmas lights flickering, the smell of oil and coffee, and the particular scent that came from people existing together in shared space. You think it's always going to be like this? Gage asked. Us helping people, getting destroyed for it, barely surviving, then doing it again. Probably. Alfie was working on the Honda Alice was rebuilding, adjusting the carburetor she hadn't quite figured out yet. Long as there are people who need help and systems that fail them, long as we're too stupid or stubborn to walk away. That make us heroes or masochists? Neither, just mechanics who occasionally fix things that aren't motorcycles. Wicker stood, stretched, grabbed his coat. I'm out. Got a meeting at 6 a.m. Sponsors making me help set up chairs. You good? Alfie looked up from the carburetor. 4 months, 13 days, still not drinking, still terrified I will. But, yeah, I'm good. He left. Gage followed 10 minutes later, headed home to his brother who was still alive, still fighting cancer, still grateful that Gage called every night. Alfie stayed, finished the carburetor adjustment, tested the throttle response, made notes for Alice about what he'd changed and why. Outside, winter pressed against the garage walls, cold and relentless. Inside, space heaters glowed orange. The coffee pot burbled. Christmas lights flickered their uncertain rhythm. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Probably spam. He answered anyway. Mr. Raines? A young woman's voice, scared, trying to hide it. My name is Sophie. I got your number from a friend. She said you help people. People who fall through the cracks. Alfie closed his eyes. Felt the weight settling over him again. The understanding that this was how it would always be. Someone scared. Someone desperate. Someone who'd tried official channels and found them closed or insufficient or too slow. Someone who needed people willing to show up even when showing up cost everything. Where are you, Sophie? I'm hiding in a gas station bathroom off Route 9. My boyfriend, he's outside. He's been drinking. He says if I don't come out, he'll... Her voice broke. I called the police 40 minutes ago. They said someone would come, but nobody's here yet. And I'm scared and I don't know what to do. And Alfie was already grabbing his keys, his phone, pulling on his leather cut. Stay in the bathroom. Lock the door. Don't come out until you hear my voice. I'm 20 minutes away. How will I know it's you? I'll knock 3 times. Then I'll tell you my name is Alfie and I'm here to help. Okay? Okay. Sophie was crying now. Thank you. God, thank you. Alfie hung up, fired up his Harley. The engine caught like it always did, rumbled like it always did, became the soundtrack to choices being made in real time without the luxury of contemplation. He should call McKinley, should coordinate with official channels, should do a dozen things that constituted proper procedure. But a scared woman was locked in a bathroom with a violent man outside, and official help was 40 minutes late, and proper procedure wasn't going to protect her in the minutes that mattered. So Alfie rolled out of the garage into December cold, engine thunder echoing off empty buildings, headlight cutting through darkness toward Route 9 and whatever waited there, toward another person who needed help, toward another situation that would probably cost him something, toward another choice between safety and showing up. And he rode fast because 20 minutes was a long time when you were scared, because every second mattered. Because somewhere in a gas station bathroom, a young woman named Sophie was counting heartbeats and praying that help would arrive before violence did. Because that's what the Hell's Riders did. They showed up, even when it cost everything, even when the world punished them for it, even when the only reward was knowing that somewhere, someone survived the night, because dangerous men chose to be safe when it mattered most. The road stretched ahead, dark, cold, uncertain. Alfie rode into it anyway, because some debts couldn't be repaid, some lines couldn't be uncrossed, and some men couldn't walk away from people who needed them. Not heroes, not villains, just mechanics who fixed broken things. Even when the things that were broken were people, even when fixing them meant breaking yourself, even when the cost was everything and the reward was nothing but the knowledge that you showed up. That was enough. It had to be enough. And somewhere behind him, in a garage decorated with failing Christmas lights and the ghosts of everyone they'd saved or failed to save, the space waited for Monday when Alice would arrive to learn about chain tension, and life would continue its forward motion toward whatever came next. But tonight, right now, there was just the road and the engine and a woman named Sophie who needed someone to show up. So Alfie rode into the darkness, toward the light, always. This story was about the cost of protection, about what happens when broken men become the only thing standing between innocence and darkness, about the line between hero and villain being measured in choices made when nobody's watching. Alfie Raines and the Hell's Riders aren't perfect. They're dangerous, flawed, carrying scars that will never fully heal. But when a 12-year-old girl burst into their garage that winter afternoon, they made a choice. They showed up. And in showing up, they proved that sometimes the people who look most dangerous are the ones willing to fight hardest for those who can't fight for themselves. Thank you for riding with us. Drop a comment telling me which moment hit you hardest. And remember, in your own life, when someone needs help, be the person who shows up, even when it costs you, even when the world doesn't understand, even when the only reward is knowing you tried. That's the real story. That's what matters. Until next time.